The rain came down in sheets, cold enough to burn. Hope Horn ran through the forest like her life depended on it because it did. Her bare feet slapped against mud and roots, her thin dress clinging to her body like a second skin, soaked through and weighing her down. Every breath tore from her lungs in ragged gasps. Behind her, voices echoed through the trees. Angry voices, hunting voices. Find her. She can't have gone far. The orphan witch needs to answer for what she's done. Witch. The word they'd branded her with 3 days ago, when the elder's daughter had fallen ill, and anyone needed to be blamed. Hope hadn't cast a curse. She didn't even know how. But when you're an Omega with no family, no pack bonds, no one to speak for you, the truth doesn't matter. Only survival matters. And right now, survival meant running. Thunder cracked overhead, and Hope stumbled, catching herself against a tree. Her palms scraped against bark. She couldn't feel the pain anymore, couldn't feel much of anything except the primal terror driving her forward. The Clearwater Pack had been her home for 23 years, the only home she'd ever known after her parents died when she was 5. But home had turned into a prison, and prison had turned into a death sentence. She pushed off the tree and kept running. That's when she heard them. Small sounds. Whimpering sounds. Hope's feet slowed despite every instinct screaming at her to keep moving. She turned her head, rainwater streaming down her face, and saw them huddled beneath a fallen log, 3 wolf pups, no more than a few weeks old, their fur matted and muddy, their eyes wide with fear. No. 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 She didn't have time for this. But one of them, the smallest, a little female with a white patch on her chest, crawled forward and let out the most pitiful sound Hope had ever heard. A sound that said, "Please don't leave us." Hope's heart cracked clean in half. "Damn it," she whispered, and dropped to her knees beside them. The pups were freezing, shivering so hard their tiny bodies shook. Where was their mother? Hope cast her gaze around the dark forest but saw nothing. No adult wolf. No den nearby. Just 3 babies who would die out here if someone didn't help them. Someone like her, someone who had no business stopping, no time to waste, no chance of survival if she delayed even a moment longer. The voices were getting closer. Hope scooped up the pups, tucking them inside her dress against her chest. They were so small, barely more than handfuls of damp fur and desperation. She could feel their hearts hammering against her skin, racing almost as fast as her own. "I've got you," she whispered, even though she had no idea if that was true. "I've got you." And then she ran again. The forest blurred around her. Trees became shadows. Shadows became nightmares. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. The pups squirmed against her chest, their tiny claws pricking her skin, but she held them tight. She wouldn't let go, couldn't let go. Something deep inside her, something she'd always tried to ignore, stirred to life. A warmth that started in her core and spread outward, wrapping around the pups like invisible arms. They quieted almost immediately, their trembling easing, and Hope felt the connection forming between them. Fragile. Impossible. Absolutely forbidden. Omegas didn't bond with pups that weren't their own. It wasn't natural. Wasn't allowed. But Hope had never been good at following rules, especially rules that made no sense. Almost there. She lied to them, because she had no idea where there was. The ground dropped away suddenly, and Hope barely managed to stay upright as she skidded down a muddy slope. She crashed through underbrush, branches tearing at her dress, her hair, her skin. One of the pups let out a frightened yelp, and Hope tightened her grip. "Shh, baby, shh. It's okay. I promise it's okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. She burst into a clearing and froze. A shrine. Ancient and crumbling, covered in moss and vines, but unmistakably sacred. Stone pillars rose from the ground in a circle, each one carved with symbols. Hope didn't recognize spirals and moons and something that looked almost like flames. In the center stood an altar, its surface smooth, despite centuries of weathering. The rain fell everywhere except inside the circle. Hope's breath caught. She'd heard stories about places like this, old places, forbidden places, where the magic of their ancestors still lingered. Places where the boundary between worlds grew thin. The voices behind her grew louder. They were close now. So close. She had no choice. Hope ran into the circle and collapsed behind the altar, pressing her back against the cold stone. The pups whimpered, and she pulled them out just enough to check on them. 3 pairs of golden eyes stared up at her. The little female with the white patch, a male with dark gray fur, and another male, slightly larger, with unusual silver markings on his paws. "You picked the wrong Omega to follow," Hope whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't even save myself." The white-patched pup licked her thumb, and Hope felt tears mixing with the rain on her face. The hunting party entered the clearing. "There, I see her. By the shrine, she's desecrating sacred ground. Grab her before she curses us all." Hope closed her eyes and pulled the pups closer. This was it. This was how it ended. Not with her rejected and alone, but with 3 innocent lives depending on her. And her too weak, too powerless, too Omega to protect them. That warmth inside her flared again, hotter this time. Brighter. It pulsed through her veins like liquid fire, and the pups responded to it, their tiny bodies glowing faintly where they pressed against her chest. Hope's eyes snapped open in shock. What was happening? Hope Horn. The voice belonged to Beta Marcus. No, wait, she couldn't use that name. Beta Glenn Mackenzie. His massive frame appeared at the edge of the circle, flanked by 5 enforcers, all of them shifted into their wolf forms. Rain steamed off their fur. Their eyes glowed with predatory intent. "Step out of the shrine. You've committed crimes against the pack. You will face judgment." Hope's voice came out stronger than she expected. "I've committed no crimes except being born without power. You're a curse upon our bloodline," Glenn snarled. "You've brought sickness and misfortune. The moon goddess herself has marked you as—" He stopped mid-sentence. They all stopped, because something was happening to the shrine. The symbols carved into the pillars began to glow faint at first, then brighter, pulsing in rhythm with Hope's heartbeat. The altar beneath her hands grew warm, and the air inside the circle shimmered like heat rising from summer pavement. "What are you doing?" Glenn demanded, and for the first time, Hope heard fear in his voice. "I'm not doing anything," Hope said, and it was the truth. She had no idea what was happening. The warmth inside her was spreading, connecting not just to the pups but to the shrine itself, to the very ground beneath her, to something ancient and vast and so much bigger than her. The largest pup, the one with silver on his paws, lifted his head and howled. It was a tiny sound, barely more than a squeak, but it echoed through the clearing like thunder, and then the world answered. The pillars erupted with light, silver and gold, and something that looked like moonlight made solid. The enforcers yelped and scrambled backward. Glenn shifted back to human form, his face pale with shock. "Impossible," he breathed. "The Shrine of First Mothers hasn't responded to anyone in 200 years. Hope stared at the light surrounding her, at the pups glowing against her chest, at the ancient magic she'd somehow awakened. Her mind couldn't process it. This didn't happen to Omegas. This didn't happen to anyone. "What is she?" one of the enforcers whispered. But before anyone could answer, a new presence entered the clearing. The air itself seemed to shift, bending around a power so absolute that Hope felt it in her bones. The enforcers immediately dropped to their knees, even in wolf form, their heads bowed in submission. Glenn fell to one knee, his eyes on the ground. A figure emerged from the tree line, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid grace of a born predator. He wore black despite the rain, and his dark hair fell across his face in wet strands. But it was his eyes that stopped Hope's heart, pale gray, almost silver, and fixed directly on her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. Alpha King Isaac Bowman, ruler of the Northern Territories, the most powerful werewolf in 500 miles, and he was staring at Hope like she'd just rewritten everything he thought he knew about the world. "Everyone out," he said quietly. His voice was deep, controlled, but it carried absolute authority. "Now, Your Majesty, this Omega has," Glenn started. "I said now." Isaac's gaze never left Hope. "And if I find out any of you laid a hand on her, you'll answer to me personally." The clearing emptied in seconds, and then it was just Hope, 3 orphaned pups, an awakened shrine, and the Alpha King who was now walking straight toward her through the rain that refused to touch the sacred ground. Hope clutched the pups tighter, her heart hammering. She should run, should shift, Except she couldn't. Her wolf had never been strong enough. Should do something other than sit here frozen while the most dangerous man in the territory approached her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. He stopped at the edge of the circle, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, wonder, and something else, something that looked almost like recognition. "How long have they been following you?" he asked, nodding toward the pups. Hope's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I found them 20 minutes ago. They were alone, abandoned." "No." Isaac shook his head slowly, his eyes moving between her and the pups. "They found you. There's a difference." He stepped into the circle. The shrine's light intensified, and Hope gasped as that warmth inside her surged again, reaching out toward him like it recognized something it had been searching for. Isaac felt it too. She could see it in the way his eyes widened, the way his breath caught. "What are you?" he asked, echoing the enforcer's earlier question. Hope lifted her chin despite her fear. "An Omega who's had a very bad week." The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Then he knelt in front of her. The Alpha King knelt in the mud, before a powerless Omega, and reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed against the white-patched pup's head. The little female leaned into his touch immediately, and the shrine pulsed with approval. Isaac's eyes snapped to Hope's. "These aren't just orphaned pups," he said softly, his voice filled with something Hope couldn't identify. Awe, maybe, or fear. "Do you know what bloodline carries silver markings on their paws?" Hope shook her head. "The royal line," Isaac whispered. "These are my brother's children. The heirs everyone thought died in the fire 6 months ago." The world tilted sideways. "I don't understand," Hope breathed. "Neither do I." Isaac looked at her like she was a miracle he hadn't known to pray for, but somehow, against every law of nature and magic, you bonded with the lost heirs of the Northern Territories, and you activated a shrine that's been dormant since before my grandfather was born. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. "What's your name?" "Hope." "Hope, Horn. Hope." He said it like he was tasting the word, testing its weight. The prophecy spoke of hope, of an Omega who would bridge the broken bond between the royal bloodline and the ancient magic. "We thought it was just a story." "What prophecy?" Hope demanded, because nothing about this made sense, and she was tired of being confused. Isaac's hand moved from the pup to her face, his thumb brushing across her rain-soaked cheek. The touch sent electricity through her entire body, and Hope saw his pupils dilate in response. "The one that says you're supposed to save us all," he murmured. "And apparently you've already started." Chapter 2. Shelter in the Storm. The rain had stopped, but Hope was still shaking. She sat inside Isaac's tent, a massive structure that had appeared in the clearing within minutes of his arrival, erected by wolves who moved with military precision and didn't ask questions. Canvas walls surrounded her, thick enough to muffle sound but thin enough that she could hear the camp being established outside. Voices, footsteps, the crackle of fires being lit despite the damp wood. And through it all, 3 small heartbeats pressed against her chest, steady and trusting in a way that made Hope want to cry. The pups had fallen asleep tucked inside the dry shirt Isaac had given her, his shirt, which smelled like pine and something darker, something that made her wolf stir for the first time in years. Hope looked down at them, at their tiny sleeping faces, and felt that impossible bond humming between them like a living thing. Silver markings. Royal bloodline. Lost heirs. She still couldn't process it. The tent flap opened, and Isaac stepped inside carrying a tray. Steam rose from a bowl of soup, and the smell made Hope's stomach clench with hunger so violent it hurt. When had she last eaten? Yesterday morning? The day before? "You need to eat," Isaac said. And it wasn't a suggestion. He set the tray on the small table beside her, and pulled up a chair. His movements careful, controlled, like he was approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any moment. He wasn't wrong. Hope eyed the soup but didn't move. "Why are you helping me?" "Why wouldn't I?" "Because I'm nobody." The words came out bitter. "An Omega with no pack, no family, no power. Your enforcers were hunting me 10 minutes ago. For all you know, they were right about me." Isaac leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unsettling silver eyes. In the lamplight, she could see him properly now, the sharp angles of his face, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw tightened when he was thinking. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful. The way storms were beautiful right before they destroyed everything in their path. Were they right? He asked quietly. No. Hope met his gaze, refusing to look away even though everything in her screamed to submit, to lower her eyes, to remember her place. I didn't curse anyone. I don't have that kind of power. I don't have any power. And yet you activated the Shrine of First Mothers. Isaac's voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. You bonded with royal heirs. You're glowing right now, did you know that? Hope looked down at herself. He was right. A faint silver shimmer clung to her skin, pulsing in rhythm with the pup's breathing. She touched her arm, and the light brightened at the contact, then faded again. I don't understand what's happening to me, she whispered. Neither do I. Isaac leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, close enough that Hope could feel the heat radiating from his body. But I know what I saw. I know those pups chose you, and I know the shrine recognized something in you that it hasn't recognized in anyone for 2 centuries. That doesn't make sense. I'm just... Stop saying you're just anything. The command in his voice made her wolf whimper. I've met thousands of wolves in my life, Hope. Alphas, betas, omegas, every rank and bloodline. And I've never met anyone who could do what you just did. Hope's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. God, some broken part of her wanted so desperately to believe that she was more than what the Clearwater Pack had told her she was. But belief was dangerous. Belief led to hope, and hope led to disappointment, and disappointment led to the kind of pain that never healed. The soup's getting cold, she said instead. Isaac's jaw tightened, but he didn't push. He just nodded and stood, moving toward the tent's entrance. I'll give you privacy. But Hope? He paused, his hand on the canvas. Those pups need you strong. Whatever else you believe or don't believe about yourself, believe that. He left before she could respond. Hope stared at the soup, at the bread beside it, at the cup of water that looked cleaner than anything she'd drunk in months. Her hands trembled as she reached for the bowl. The first spoonful hit her tongue, and she nearly sobbed at how good it tasted. Rich, warm, real food, not the scraps she'd been living on. She ate like she was starving because she was, and the whole time, the pups slept on, their tiny bodies warm against her skin. When the bowl was empty, Hope finally let herself think about everything that had happened. About Glenn and the hunting party, about the shrine and the light, and the way Isaac had looked at her like she mattered, like she was important. No one had looked at her like that in 18 years. Who were your parents? She whispered to the sleeping pups. And why did you come to me? The white-patched female stirred, making small dream sounds, and Hope stroked her head gently. The bond between them pulsed stronger, and with it came flashes of emotion, fear, loss, cold, and then warmth, safety, home. They'd been searching for home, and somehow, they'd decided she was it. Tears slipped down Hope's cheeks before she could stop them. She'd been searching for the same thing her whole life. Maybe that's why they'd found each other. Maybe broken things were drawn together, called to each other, across impossible distances, by the simple need to not be alone anymore. The tent flap opened again, and Hope quickly wiped her face. But it wasn't Isaac who entered, it was a woman, small and fierce-looking, with dark hair braided tight against her skull and eyes that assessed everything in a single glance. I'm Carrie, she said, not bothering with titles or formalities. The Alpha King asked me to bring you proper clothes and check on the pups. She held up a bundle of fabric. I'm also the pack healer, so if you're injured, now's the time to speak up. Hope blinked. I'm fine. You're covered in cuts and bruises. You've been running through a forest in a storm, and you're holding 3 newborn royal heirs like they're made of glass. Carrie set the clothes down and crossed her arms. Try again. Despite everything, Hope almost smiled. I'm functional. Better. Carrie moved closer, her eyes on the pups. May I? Hope's arms tightened instinctively, but she forced herself to relax. Carrie knelt and gently examined each pup, checking their breathing, their heartbeat, their tiny paws and ears. The pups didn't wake, didn't even stir, and Carrie's eyebrows rose. They trust you completely, she said quietly. That shouldn't be possible. Royal heirs are born with their wolves closer to the surface. They're suspicious of everyone except family, but they're sleeping like you've known them their whole lives. Is that bad? I don't know. Carrie sat back on her heels, studying Hope with new interest. What's your bloodline? Unknown. Hope's voice went flat. I'm an orphan. Parents died when I was 5. No records. No relatives. Just me. Carrie didn't look satisfied, but she didn't push. Well, whoever you are, you've got the Alpha King more rattled than I've seen him in years. And that's saying something. Hope's pulse quickened. Why is he here? In these territories, I mean. Kings don't usually patrol border packs. He's been searching. Carrie stood and moved toward the tent entrance. For 6 months. Ever since the fire that supposedly killed his brother and sister-in-law. He didn't believe they were dead, said he would have felt it through the Alpha bond. Turns out he was right. She paused. Get changed. Rest. The pups will need to feed soon, and we'll figure out what to do about that. You should know Isaac's called a gathering for dawn. Every ranked wolf in the territory will be there. Why? Carrie's smile was sharp. Because you just changed everything, Hope Horn. And now everyone needs to know what that means. She left, and Hope was alone again with the pups and her racing thoughts. Changed everything. The words echoed in her mind, mixing with older words, crueler words. Worthless, powerless, broken. The Clearwater Pack had spent 18 years making sure Hope knew exactly what she was, the lowest of the low. Kept alive out of obligation to the moon goddess's laws, but never valued, never wanted, never seen as anything more than a burden. And now the Alpha King said she was important. Now ancient magic responded to her touch. Now 3 royal heirs slept against her heart like she was their mother. Hope looked down at them, really looked. The white-patched female, the dark gray male, the silver-marked male. 3 tiny lives that depended on her now, whether she was ready or not. I don't know how to do this, she whispered to them. I don't know how to be what you need. But even as she said it, that warmth inside her, the one that had awakened at the shrine, pulsed with certainty. It didn't care what she knew or didn't know. It didn't care about her doubts or her fears. It just knew, with absolute conviction, that these pups were hers to protect, and maybe that was enough. Hope changed into the clothes Carrie had brought, soft wool pants and a tunic that actually fit, so different from the threadbare dress she'd been wearing. She braided her wet hair to keep it out of her face, then settled back down with the pups. Outside, she heard Isaac's voice giving orders, heard the camp settling in for the night, heard the normal sounds of pack life, laughter, conversation, the easy comfort of wolves who belonged to something bigger than themselves. She'd forgotten what that sounded like. The tent flap opened one more time, and Isaac stepped inside. He'd changed 2 dry clothes, his hair pushed back from his face. But his eyes still held that intense focus, that look that said he was trying to solve her like a puzzle. Carrie said you refused a medical examination, he said. I'm fine. You keep saying that. He moved closer, and Hope's breath caught. But you're not fine. You're exhausted, terrified, running on nothing but adrenaline and sheer stubbornness. He crouched beside her chair, bringing them eye to eye. Let me help you, Hope. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care what happens to me? Isaac was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out slowly, so slowly, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, reverent almost, and it made something in Hope's chest crack open. Because you saved them, he said softly. Because you could have kept running, could have left them to die, could have chosen your own survival. But you didn't. You stopped. You protected them, and you did it without hesitation, without question, even though it put you in more danger. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, and Hope forgot how to breathe. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. I'm nobody, Hope whispered. But the words had lost their conviction. No. Isaac's voice dropped lower, rougher. You're the woman who bonded with my nephews and niece. You're the woman the shrine chose. And whether you believe it yet or not, you're the woman who's about to turn my entire world upside down. His hand was still on her face. His eyes were still locked on hers, and the space between them felt charged with something Hope had no name, for something that made her skin tingle and her wolf whine with longing. "I don't know how to be what you need," she said, echoing what she'd told the pups. "Then we'll figure it out together." Isaac's smile was small, tired, but genuine. "I'm not asking you to be anything other than what you already are. Just trust me enough to let me keep you safe." "Can you do that?" Hope thought about the shrine and the prophecy and the way her entire life had changed in the span of an hour. She thought about Glenn and the hunting party and everything she was running from. And she thought about 3 small heartbeats against her chest, and the man kneeling before her who looked at her like she mattered. "I'll try," she whispered. "That's all I'm asking." Isaac stood and moved toward the tent entrance again, but this time Hope called after him. "Isaac?" He turned, and something flickered across his face when she used his name. Something warm. "Thank you," Hope said, "for stopping them, for helping us." His smile widened just a fraction. "Thank you for keeping them alive long enough for me to find them. Get some rest, Hope. Tomorrow's going to be complicated." He left, and Hope was alone with the pups and the quiet and the terrifying, wonderful possibility that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as powerless as she'd always believed. Outside, the camp settled into silence. Inside, Hope held 3 sleeping pups and let herself believe, just for a moment, that she might actually survive this, that she might actually belong. Chapter 3. Standing before judgment. Dawn came too soon. Hope woke to the sound of the pups whimpering, their tiny bodies squirming against her chest with increasing urgency. Hunger. They were hungry, and she had no idea what to do about it. "Shh, babies, I know," she murmured, sitting up carefully. Her body ached everywhere, muscles she'd forgotten she had screamed in protest from yesterday's run through the forest. But the pain was distant compared to the panic rising in her throat. "I know you need to eat. Just give me a minute to figure this out." The tent flap opened, and Carrie entered carrying a basket. "Thought I'd find you awake. Wolf pups have terrible timing." She set the basket down, revealing several bottles filled with milk. "Goat's milk mixed with herbs. It's not ideal, but it'll keep them alive until we find a nursing she-wolf." "Will they take bottles?" Hope asked, already reaching for one. "Royal pups, probably not without a fight." Carrie knelt beside her. "But you've got that bond working for you. They'll take it from you even if they wouldn't from anyone else." She was right. The moment Hope offered the bottle to the white-patched female, the pup latched on desperately, her tiny paws kneading against Hope's hand. The 2 males followed, and soon all 3 were feeding, their earlier distress melting into contented sounds that made Hope's heart squeeze. "You're a natural," Carrie observed, watching with clinical interest. "I'm terrified," Hope admitted. "Same thing sometimes." Carrie sat back, her expression softening slightly. "You should know the gathering starts in an hour. Isaac wants you there, but you don't have to attend if you're not ready." Hope's stomach dropped. "What happens at this gathering?" "Isaac announces that the heirs are alive. He explains how they were found. And he decides what happens next." Carrie paused. "Including what happens to you." The words hung in the air like a threat. "They'll want me gone," Hope said quietly. It wasn't a question. She knew how this worked. She'd seen it play out her entire life. Omegas were tolerated, not celebrated, and an Omega bonded to royal heirs? That was an anomaly. A problem to be solved. "Some will," Carrie agreed. "But Isaac's word is law. If he says you stay, you stay. And if he decides I'm too dangerous?" Hope looked down at the pups, her voice breaking. "If he takes them from me?" Carrie's silence was answer enough. Hope finished feeding the pups, her hands trembling slightly as she burped each one. They were so small, so helpless. The bond between them hummed with contentment now, their bellies full, their need for her absolute. How could she survive having them ripped away? How could they survive it? "I need to see Isaac," Hope said suddenly. "Before the gathering." Carrie studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll take you to him." "But Hope? Whatever you're planning to say, make it count. Isaac's under a lot of pressure right now. The council's been pushing him to remarry. To secure the bloodline. Finding the heirs changes that calculation, but it also complicates everything." She stood. "Just be careful. Kings are more dangerous than alphas. Even the kind ones. 20 minutes later, Hope stood outside Isaac's tent, with the pups bundled against her chest in a sling Carrie had provided. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure everyone in camp could hear it. Around her, wolves moved with purpose, building fires, preparing food, erecting platforms for what she assumed would be the gathering space. Several stopped to stare at her, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Hope lifted her chin and stared back until they looked away. "The Alpha King is expecting you," a guard said, pulling back the tent flap. Hope stepped inside. Isaac stood at a table covered in maps, his hands braced on the surface, his shoulders tense. He looked like he hadn't slept. When he turned to face her, Hope saw exhaustion etched into every line of his face, but also something else. Something fierce and protective that made her breath catch. "Hope." He crossed to her immediately, his eyes scanning her face, then dropping to the pups. "Is everything all right?" "I need to ask you something," Hope said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "And I need you to be honest with me." Isaac's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Always. Are you going to take them from me?" The question landed like a physical blow. Isaac's eyes widened, and something that looked almost like pain flickered across his face. "Is that what you think I'd do?" His voice was rough. "I think you're a king," Hope said quietly. "I think you have responsibilities and a kingdom to protect. I think 3 royal heirs bonded to a powerless Omega is probably a nightmare scenario for you." She swallowed hard. "And I think if you decided I was too dangerous or too weak or too anything to keep them safe, you'd do what you had to do. So I'm asking, please just tell me now. Tell me so I can prepare. Tell me so I can." "Hope." Isaac closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to frame her face. The touch stole her words. "I am not taking them from you. Not today, not ever. Do you understand me?" "But, no." His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones, and Hope felt tears she hadn't known were building spill over. "Listen to me. I've spent 6 months searching for them. 6 months believing my brother's entire bloodline was gone. And then you appeared, you. This impossible woman who bonded with them, who activated ancient magic, who protected them when no one else even knew they needed protecting." His voice dropped lower, more intense. "You didn't just find them, Hope. You saved them. And I don't care what the council says, or what traditions dictate, or what anyone thinks should happen. Those pups chose you, and I'm not going to dishonor that choice." Hope couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the weight of his words settling into her chest like stones, heavy, permanent, real. "What if I'm not strong enough?" she whispered. "What if something happens to them because of me? Then we'll face it together." Isaac's forehead pressed against hers, and Hope's eyes fluttered closed. "But you need to stop expecting the worst from everyone around you. Stop waiting for people to abandon you or hurt you or tell you you're not enough." His breath was warm against her lips. "You are enough, Hope. More than enough." A knock on the tent pole broke the moment. Isaac pulled back, his hands dropping reluctantly, and Hope felt the loss like cold water. "Your Majesty," a male voice called. "The gathering is assembled." Isaac's expression shifted, the soft concern hardening into something more commanding, the king returning to the surface. But when he looked at Hope, his eyes were still warm. "Are you ready for this?" Hope thought about Glenn and the Clearwater Pack. Thought about 18 years of being invisible, of being nothing. Thought about the pups sleeping against her chest and the bond humming between them, and the way Isaac had just looked at her like she hung the moon. "No," she admitted, "but I'll do it anyway." Isaac's smile was brief but genuine. "That's my girl." The words shouldn't have affected her. She wasn't his girl, wasn't his anything. But her wolf preened at the claim, and Hope had to fight not to react. They walked to the gathering together, Isaac slightly ahead, Hope at his right side, guards flanking them. The camp had transformed. Hundreds of wolves filled the clearing, seated in concentric circles around a raised platform. The morning sun cut through the trees in golden shafts, making everything look almost sacred. Conversations died as they approached. Every eye turned to them. To Hope, she felt their judgment like physical weight. Saw the way they assessed her. Catalogued her weaknesses. Found her lacking. Omega. The word whispered through the crowd like poison. Isaac's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. The touch was brief, professional, but it anchored her. "Stay close," he murmured. "And remember, you belong here." They climbed onto the platform, and Isaac gestured for Hope to stand beside him rather than behind. It was a statement, one that sent murmurs rippling through the crowd. "Wolves of the Northern Territories." Isaac's voice rang out, powerful and absolute. The murmuring stopped instantly. 6 months ago, my brother Javier and his mate were killed in a fire that destroyed their entire compound. We mourned them. We honored them. And we believed their bloodline had ended. He paused, letting the words sink in. "We were wrong." Isaac nodded to Hope, and she understood. With trembling hands, she pulled back the sling's fabric, revealing the 3 sleeping pups. Gasps echoed through the clearing. Several wolves stood, their eyes wide with shock. "The heirs survived," Isaac continued. "Against all odds, against all reason, they survived. And they were found by this woman, Hope Horn, an Omega from the Clearwater Pack, who protected them, bonded with them, and brought them home." "An Omega bonded with royal heirs," someone shouted. "That's impossible." "And yet it happened," Isaac said calmly. "Witnessed by myself and confirmed by our healers. The bond is real, complete, and unbreakable." "She must have used dark magic," another voice called. "No Omega has that kind of power naturally." The accusation hit Hope like a fist. She'd known this was coming, but knowing didn't make it easier. Her hands tightened protectively around the pups. "Be very careful with your next words," Isaac said, and his voice dropped into something dangerous. "Because you're not just accusing Hope of dark magic. You're accusing the moon goddess herself of making a mistake." Silence fell like a hammer. "The Shrine of First Mothers responded to her," Isaac continued. "Ancient magic that hasn't awakened in 2 centuries recognized her. Are you suggesting the shrine built by our ancestors, blessed by the goddess, would respond to corruption?" His eyes scanned the crowd, daring anyone to answer. "Or is it perhaps possible that we've forgotten what true power looks like? That we've become so focused on bloodlines and traditions that we've lost sight of what the goddess actually values?" "Your Majesty." An older woman stood, white-haired, regal, her eyes sharp. "I am Elder Willa Roberts of the Western Council. No one here doubts the goddess's wisdom. But surely you can see the complications of this situation. An Omega bonded to heirs means they have a protector," Isaac interrupted. "One who's already proven she'll put their lives above her own. What more could we ask for?" "We could ask for someone appropriate," Willa said carefully. "Someone trained. Someone of proper rank to raise future alphas. Someone who isn't an Omega, you mean," Hope said, and her voice carried across the clearing despite her fear. Every eye snapped to her. Isaac's hand pressed against her back, not restraining but supporting. Willa's expression didn't change. "This isn't personal, child. It's practical. Omegas lack the strength, the authority. The what?" Hope took a step forward, and the pup stirred at her chest, responding to her emotion. "The power? Because I seem to remember activating a shrine that none of your appropriate wolves could touch. The authority? These pups chose me. Isn't that authority enough?" Her voice grew stronger. "Or is it just that you can't accept that the goddess might see value in something you've spent centuries dismissing?" The clearing erupted into chaos, some wolves shouting agreement, others calling for Hope's removal. The noise woke the pups, and they began to cry, their small voices cutting through the argument. And then everything changed. The white-patched female lifted her head and howled a pure, piercing sound that shouldn't have been possible for a pup so young. The shrine, still visible at the clearing's edge, blazed to life. Silver light poured from the pillars, and the symbols carved into stone began to glow. Every wolf in the clearing felt it, the pull of ancient magic, the weight of divine presence. The pups' howling grew louder, and Hope gasped as that warmth inside her surged, connecting to them, to the shrine, to something vast and eternal that existed beyond human understanding. Her skin began to glow, silver and gold mixing, and she felt her wolf rise for the first time in years, not weak, not broken, but powerful and whole and absolutely certain. "Hope," Isaac breathed beside her, his eyes wide with awe. But Hope couldn't respond, couldn't do anything except hold the pups and feel the magic pouring through her, reshaping her, awakening parts of herself she hadn't known existed. And in that moment, every wolf in the clearing felt it too. felt the bond between Hope and the heirs, felt the shrine's approval, felt the goddess's presence like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. When the light finally faded, Hope was still standing, still holding the pups who had quieted back to sleep, but something had changed. She felt it in her bones, in her blood. She was still an Omega. But she was also something more, something the prophecy had been waiting for. Elder Willa stared at her, face pale. "Blessed Mother," she whispered. "The silver flame. She's the one from the old texts." Isaac's hand found Hope's, his fingers threading through hers. And when he spoke, his voice carried absolute conviction. "Still think she's inappropriate?" No one answered, because there was no argument left to make. Chapter 4. Secrets of the Ancient Ones. The gathering dispersed slowly, wolves breaking into clusters of heated conversation. Hope could feel their stares, some reverent, some suspicious, all of them weighing her worth against prophecies and traditions she didn't understand. Isaac's hand remained in hers, warm and steady, as he led her away from the platform. The guards formed a protective circle around them, and Hope was grateful for the barrier. Her legs felt unsteady, her entire body humming with residual magic she had no idea how to control. "Where are we going?" she asked as they passed through the camp toward the forest's edge. "Somewhere we can talk without an audience," Isaac replied. His jaw was tight, his expression unreadable. "And somewhere you can learn what you've just become." They walked in silence, the pups content against Hope's chest, their tiny heartbeats synchronizing with her own still racing pulse. The forest grew denser, older, the trees towering overhead like cathedral pillars. After 20 minutes, they emerged into a clearing Hope hadn't seen before. Her breath caught. A stone circle stood at its center, similar to the shrine but larger, more elaborate. 7 pillars instead of 5, each one carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the dappled sunlight. In the middle sat a stone table, not an altar, but something that looked almost like a desk, its surface covered in ancient writing. "The archive of First Mothers," Isaac said quietly. "Where our ancestors recorded the prophecies." He released her hand and moved toward the nearest pillar, his fingers tracing the carved symbols. "I haven't been here since I was a child. My father brought me once, told me stories about the silver flame. I thought they were just that, stories." Hope approached the stone table cautiously, the pups stirring at her movement. The writing on its surface glowed faintly, responding to her presence. She couldn't read the language, but something deep inside her recognized it anyway, felt the weight of its meaning pressing against her consciousness. "What is the silver flame?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Isaac turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw something she couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe, or wonder, or both. "A myth," he said. "Or so we thought. The prophecy speaks of an Omega born under a blood moon, marked by the goddess herself, who would bridge the broken bond between ancient magic and royal bloodlines." He moved closer, his gaze intense. "She would bear the silver flame, a power that could heal or destroy, protect or consume. And she would appear in our darkest hour, when the royal line was on the brink of extinction." Hope's stomach dropped. "The fire that killed your brother and his mate, 6 months ago." Isaac's voice roughened. "The same week you would have turned 23. The same week the blood moon rose over the northern territories." The pieces clicked into place, and Hope's knees went weak. Isaac caught her immediately, his arms coming around her, careful not to crush the pups between them. "I was born during a blood moon," Hope whispered against his chest. "The Clearwater Pack's elder told me once, when I was young. She said it was a bad omen, that my parents had died because I'd brought a curse upon them. They lied to you." Isaac's voice was fierce, or they didn't understand. "The blood moon isn't a curse, it's a marking. The goddess's way of identifying her chosen vessels." "Chosen for what?" Hope pulled back to look at him, tears burning her eyes. "I don't want this. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to survive, to find somewhere I belonged. And you did." Isaac's hands cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away the tears that had started to fall. "You found them. 3 pups who needed you as desperately as you needed them. Don't you see, Hope? This isn't punishment. It's purpose." The white-patched pup chose that moment to wake, her golden eyes blinking open. She looked up at Hope and made a small, contented sound, then nuzzled against her chest and fell back asleep. The simple trust of it shattered something in Hope's chest. "Tell me about their parents," she said quietly. "Tell me about Javier and his mate." Isaac's expression darkened, grief etching lines around his eyes. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair, and for a moment he looked less like a king and more like a man carrying impossible weight. "Javier was my younger brother by 3 years," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything. I'm not warm, easy with people, always laughing. He found his true mate when he was 25. Amalia." His voice caught. "Amalia. Lamb. She was an artist. Incredibly gifted. She painted murals on the walls of their compound, these beautiful, intricate scenes from our history. The pups would have grown up surrounded by their legacy, learning who they were through her art." Hope listened, her heart aching for these people she'd never known, for the family these pups had lost. "They were good leaders," Isaac continued. "Fair. Loved by their pack. When Amalia got pregnant, it was like the entire territory celebrated. Triplets are rare among wolves, powerful. We thought it meant our bloodline was being blessed." His laugh was bitter. "Turned out it made them a target." "What do you mean?" Isaac moved to one of the pillars, leaning against it like he needed the support. "The fire wasn't an accident. We found evidence afterward, accelerants, signs of forced entry. Someone wanted them dead. All of them. We assumed they'd succeeded." He looked at Hope, and his eyes were haunted. "I spent 6 months hunting for the ones responsible. 6 months following leads that went nowhere, questioning wolves who knew nothing. And all that time, these 3, he gestured to the sleeping pups, were out there, alone, surviving somehow until they found you." "How?" Hope asked. "How did they survive? They're too young to have been away from their mother for 6 months. That's what I can't figure out." Isaac pushed off the pillar and moved to the stone table, his fingers trailing over the glowing script. "Unless..." He stopped, his entire body going still. "Unless what?" "Unless the prophecy protected them." Isaac's eyes snapped to hers. "The silver flame isn't just about you, Hope. It's about what you're connected to. The old texts say that the flame bearer would be drawn to those she was meant to protect, that the goddess herself would preserve them until the connection could be made." He shook his head, wonder coloring his voice. "What if these pups survived because you existed? Because somewhere out there, you were waiting for them, and the universe bent itself to make sure you found each other?" The idea was too big, too impossible, but Hope felt its truth resonating through the bond she shared with the pups, through the silver light still flickering at the edges of her vision. "If that's true," she said slowly, "then whoever killed Javier and Amalia will come for you next." Isaac's expression hardened into something dangerous. "Which is why you're staying with me, under my protection. No arguments." Hope should have protested, should have insisted she could take care of herself. But she'd learned the hard way that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Okay," she agreed quietly. Isaac blinked, clearly surprised by her easy acceptance. "Okay? I'm not stupid, Isaac. I know I can't protect them alone. Not from whoever's powerful enough to kill an alpha and his mate." Hope looked down at the pups, her resolve hardening. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe. Even if that means accepting help." Something shifted in Isaac's expression, respect, maybe, mixed with that same heated intensity she'd seen before. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, and suddenly they were close again, close enough that Hope could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You're remarkable," he said softly. "Do you know that?" Hope's breath caught. "I'm terrified." Remarkable and terrified aren't mutually exclusive. His hand came up to cup her cheek, and Hope leaned into the touch without thinking. "Hope, I need you to understand something. What happened at the gathering? What's happening right now? This is bigger than just keeping the pups safe. You've awakened something that's been dormant for centuries. There will be wolves who fear that, who fear you. Like Elder Willa. Like half the council," Isaac confirmed grimly. "They've spent generations building power structures based on tradition and bloodlines. And you've just proven that the goddess values something else entirely. That threatens everything they believe. So what do we do?" Isaac's smile was sharp. We make them understand that the goddess's will isn't a suggestion. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Hope's entire body went hot, and we figure out what the silver flame actually means, what you're capable of. Because Hope, what you did at the gathering, that was just the beginning. The air between them felt charged, electric. Hope's wolf was howling for her to close the distance, to press against him, to claim and be claimed. But Isaac stepped back, breaking the spell, his expression carefully neutral. "You should rest," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Tonight, we'll start your training. If you're going to protect these pups, you need to know how to use your power." "Training with who?" Isaac's smile turned wicked. "Me." They returned to camp as the sun reached its peak. The atmosphere had shifted. Wolves who had stared with suspicion now ducked their heads in respect as Hope passed. Some even pressed their fists to their hearts, an acknowledgement of rank she didn't understand. Carrie was waiting at Hope's tent with food and supplies. "You caused quite a stir," she said dryly. "Half the camp thinks you're the goddess incarnate. The other half thinks you're a very convincing fraud. What do you think?" Hope asked. Settling into a chair to feed the pups, Carrie considered her for a long moment. "I think you're a woman who's been underestimated her entire life, and I think everyone who dismissed you is about to have a very painful realization." She handed Hope a bottle. "Also, I think you've got the Alpha King more twisted up than I've ever seen him, so congratulations on that." Hope felt her cheeks heat. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." Carrie's grin was knowing. "Just be careful. Isaac spent his entire life putting duty before everything else. If he lets himself care about you really care, it'll complicate things in ways neither of you are ready for." The words settled into Hope's chest like stones. She knew Carrie was right. Kings didn't fall for powerless omegas, prophecy or not. Whatever this thing was between them, this attraction, this connection, it couldn't go anywhere. Isaac needed a queen, someone strong and capable and appropriate, someone who wasn't her. But even as she thought it, Hope remembered the way he'd looked at her in the archive, the way his voice had roughened when he called her remarkable, the way his touch had made her feel like she was something precious, something worth protecting. Maybe Carrie was wrong, or maybe Hope was setting herself up for the worst heartbreak of her life. The pups finished eating and fell asleep in her arms, their tiny bodies warm and trusting. Hope stared down at them, at these 3 small lives that had changed everything, and made herself a promise. Whatever happened between her and Isaac, whatever complicated feelings were growing between them, none of it mattered as much as keeping these pups safe. She would learn to control her power, would face down councils and prophecies and ancient magic, would become whatever she needed to be, because they had chosen her. And Hope Horn didn't know how to be a lot of things, but she knew how to be loyal, how to fight for the few people who'd ever shown her kindness, how to protect what was hers. The afternoon passed quietly. Hope rested, fed the pups again, and tried not to think about the training session with Isaac that was coming. But as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, her nerves returned with a vengeance. A guard appeared at her tent. "The Alpha King requests your presence. I'm to escort you and watch the pups while you train." Hope's stomach flipped. "The pups come with me." The guard looked uncertain. "Your Majesty, I mean, Miss Horn," the Alpha King specifically said. "The pups come with me," Hope repeated, her voice firmer. The bond between them hummed with approval, and she felt that silver warmth building in her chest again. "I'm not leaving them. Not yet." The guard's eyes widened slightly, and he bowed his head. "As you wish." They made their way through the camp to a cleared area at its edge. Isaac waited there, dressed in simple training clothes, his arms crossed over his chest. When he saw Hope approaching with the pups still strapped to her chest, his eyebrows rose. "I said I'd watch them," he pointed out. "And I said they stay with me." Hope lifted her chin. "The bond is still new. Separating us causes them distress." It was true, but it was also an excuse. Hope wasn't ready to be apart from them, wasn't ready to trust anyone else, even Isaac, with their care. Isaac studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. We'll work around it." He gestured to the open space. "Do you know anything about controlling a wolf shift?" "I've never successfully shifted," Hope admitted. "My wolf has always been too weak. Your wolf was never weak. Isaac moved closer, circling her slowly. She was dormant, waiting. Now she's awake, and you need to learn how to work with her instead of fighting her. How do I do that? Close your eyes. Hope obeyed, her heart racing. Feel her. Isaac's voice came from behind her now, low and commanding. Feel your wolf moving beneath your skin. She's not separate from you, Hope. She's not something to control. She's you. The truest version of you. Hope concentrated, reaching inward. And there she was, her wolf, stronger than she'd ever been, silver-furred and golden-eyed. Powerful. Whole. Their eyes met across the internal landscape of Hope's mind, and the wolf tilted her head. Finally, she seemed to say, finally you see me. I see her, Hope whispered. Good. Isaac's hands settled on her shoulders, warm even through her shirt. Now ask her to come forward. Not to take over, but to merge with you. To share your skin. Hope reached for her wolf, and the wolf reached back. Power surged through her, clean and bright, and so much stronger than anything she'd ever felt. Her bones shifted, her senses sharpening, and when she opened her eyes, the world had changed. Colors were more vivid, sounds more distinct. She could smell everything: the camp, the forest, Isaac's scent wrapping around her like smoke and pine, and something uniquely him. Look at your hands, Isaac said softly. Hope looked down. Her hands were still human, but silver light danced beneath her skin, and her nails had sharpened into claws. A partial shift. Something that should have been impossible for an Omega. How? She breathed. Because you're not just an Omega anymore, Isaac said. You're the silver flame. And Hope? He moved to stand in front of her, his eyes blazing with intensity. You're going to be magnificent. Chapter 5. Fire in the Darkness. Training with Isaac became Hope's lifeline over the next 3 days. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, she would meet him at the clearing's edge. The pups would sleep in their sling against her chest, lulled by the rhythm of her movements, while Isaac pushed her to embrace the power she'd spent her whole life suppressing. Again, he commanded on the third night, circling her as she held the partial shift. Hold it longer this time. Feel your wolf settling into your bones. Not fighting against them. Hope gritted her teeth, silver light flickering beneath her skin. Sweat dripped down her spine despite the cool evening air. Every muscle trembled with effort. I can't, it's too much. You can. Isaac's voice was closer now, steady and sure. You're holding back because you're afraid of what happens if you let go. But Hope, your power isn't going to consume you. It's going to complete you. She wanted to believe him. But 23 years of being told she was too weak, too broken, too Omega didn't disappear in 3 days of training. The shift broke, and Hope stumbled. Isaac caught her before she hit the ground, his arms solid and warm around her waist. For a moment they stayed frozen, her back against his chest, his breath warm against her ear, both of them breathing hard. You held it for 2 minutes, Isaac said quietly. That's 40 seconds longer than yesterday. It's not enough. Hope's voice was rough with frustration. It's progress. His arms tightened briefly, before he released her, stepping back to give her space. Hope, you're learning in days what takes most wolves years to master. Stop expecting perfection. She turned to face him. And in the dying light, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features. He'd been working non-stop training her, managing the camp, dealing with the council's constant challenges to her position. When did he sleep? When did he rest? You should take a break, Hope said impulsively. You look careful. Isaac's smile was tired but genuine. Telling a king he looks terrible is generally considered poor form. I was going to say tired. Hope moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Isaac, you're pushing yourself too hard. When was the last time you actually slept? When was the last time you did? Fair point. The pups woke every few hours needing food or comfort, and even when they slept, Hope's mind raced with everything she'd learned, everything she still needed to learn. Sleep felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. We're quite a pair, she said softly. Yes. Isaac's eyes held hers, and something passed between them: understanding, connection, and that ever-present attraction that made Hope's skin feel too tight. We are. The moment stretched, loaded with everything they weren't saying. Hope's wolf whined, pushing her to close the distance, to touch him, to claim what her instincts insisted was hers. But before she could move, a horn sounded from the camp, sharp and urgent. Isaac's expression shifted instantly, all softness vanishing. That's the alert signal. Something's wrong. They ran. The camp was in controlled chaos when they arrived, wolves moving with military precision, forming defensive positions around the perimeter. Carrie intercepted them immediately, her face pale. "We've got company," she said tersely. Elder Willa and 6 council members just arrived unannounced. They're demanding an emergency tribunal. For what? Isaac's voice was deadly calm. For Hope. Carrie's eyes flicked to her apologetically. They're claiming she's manipulated you with dark magic. They want to test her blood, examine the pups, and if they find evidence of corruption. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Hope's blood turned to ice. They're going to try to take them. Over my dead body, Isaac growled. But even as he said it, Hope saw the calculation in his eyes. The council had power, ancient power, political power. If they united against him, even a king had limits. "Your Majesty." Elder Willa emerged from between the tents, flanked by council members. 6 wolves, all of them older, all of them radiating authority that came from centuries of bloodline and tradition. "We need to speak, now." "Then speak," Isaac said coldly. "I have nothing to hide." "But does she?" Willa's gaze fixed on Hope like a predator spotting wounded prey. 3 days ago, an unknown Omega activated ancient magic that hasn't responded in 200 years. 3 days ago, she bonded with royal heirs through means we don't understand. And 3 days ago, you, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, declared her under your personal protection. She stepped closer. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, but this reeks of manipulation, of dark arts designed to ensnare both you and the heirs for purposes we cannot yet fathom." "That's insane," Hope said, finding her voice. "I didn't even know about any prophecy until Isaac told me. I didn't ask for this power." "Precisely." Another council member spoke, a man with iron gray hair and cold eyes. "You didn't ask for it." Which raises the question. Who gave it to you? What entity or force is working through you? The pups woke at Hope's rising distress, beginning to whimper. She instinctively tightened her arms around them, and the bond pulsed protectively. Silver light flickered at her fingertips, responding to her fear. "See?" Willa pointed. "She can't even control it. This is exactly what we warned would happen if we allowed corruption near the royal bloodline." "The only corruption here is your prejudice," Isaac said, his voice dropping into that dangerous register that made lesser wolves submit. "Hope has done nothing except protect those pups. She's trained, learned, grown stronger every day. If you can't see that, we see what we see, Your Majesty." Willa's tone was respectful but unyielding. "And what we see is a king compromised by an Omega of unknown origin who wields power she shouldn't possess. For the good of the territories, we must investigate. And if I refuse, then we'll have no choice but to call for a vote of no confidence." The words landed like a bomb. The council can override even a king's authority if 4 of the 7 seats agree that he's been compromised. "And Your Majesty?" Willa's smile was sharp. "We already have the votes." Hope watched Isaac's jaw clench, watched him weigh his options. He could fight them, could refuse and force a confrontation. But that would tear the territories apart, would create civil war when they needed unity. And it would paint Hope as the cause of that division. She couldn't let that happen. "I'll submit to your tests," Hope heard herself say. "Whatever you need to prove I'm not corrupted or manipulated or whatever else you think I am. I'll do it." "Hope," Isaac started, but she cut him off. "No." She looked at him, willing him to understand. "If this is what it takes to protect them, to keep the territories united, then I'll do it. I'm not afraid of your tests." She turned to face Willa directly. "Because I know what I am. And more importantly, I know what I'm not." Willa's expression remained neutral, but Hope caught the flash of surprise in her eyes. "Very well. The testing will begin at dawn. You'll be confined to your tent until then, under guard. The pups will remain with you, but you're not to leave or communicate with anyone except the healers who bring their food." "That's house arrest," Carrie protested. "That's protocol," Willa countered. If she's truly innocent, she has nothing to fear. Isaac looked like he wanted to argue, but Hope shook her head slightly. She could see the political trap they'd laid. If Isaac fought too hard to protect her, it would only fuel suspicions that she'd compromised him. The only way through this was to prove herself, even if the thought terrified her. "I agree to the terms," Hope said quietly. The next hour passed in tense silence as Hope was escorted to her tent. 2 guards posted themselves outside wolves she didn't recognize, their expressions carefully blank. Isaac tried to follow, but Willa blocked him. "Your Majesty, you must understand how this looks. Until we've cleared her, any contact between you could be seen as continued manipulation. She's alone." Isaac bit out. "With 3 pups who need constant care, the healers will provide everything necessary. Your Majesty, please, for the good of all of us, maintain appropriate distance." Hope watched from her tent entrance as Isaac struggled with the order. His eyes found hers across the space between them, and the anguish in them made her chest ache. "I'll be fine," she mouthed. He didn't look convinced. The tent flap closed, and Hope was alone with the pups and her spiraling thoughts. She fed them, changed them, sang soft songs her mother had taught her before she died. Songs Hope had almost forgotten until now. The pups settled against her chest, their warmth a comfort against the cold fear spreading through her veins. What if the tests proved something she didn't understand? What if there was dark magic involved and she'd been a pawn all along without knowing? What if— Stop. Her wolf's voice was firm in her mind. "You know who you are. Don't let them make you doubt." But doubt was easy when you'd spent your whole life being told you were nothing. Hours passed. The camp grew quiet, and Hope sat in the darkness, holding 3 sleeping pups and trying to remember how to breathe. A sound outside her tent made her tense. Not the guards, they'd been silent as statues. This was something else. Something wrong. The smell hit her a second later. Smoke. Hope's heart lurched. She moved to the tent entrance, pulling back the flap. Both guards lay on the ground, unconscious or dead. She couldn't tell which. And beyond them, flames were spreading through the camp, fast and deliberate and definitely not natural. "No," Hope whispered. "No, no, no." She grabbed the sling with the pups, checking frantically to make sure they were secure, and burst from the tent. Chaos surrounded her, wolves shouting, trying to contain the blaze, but it was spreading too fast. Someone had done this. Someone had started a fire and taken out her guards, and a figure emerged from the smoke. Tall, cloaked, face hidden beneath a dark hood. "Hello, little Omega," a voice rasped. "We've been looking for you." Hope backed away, her mind racing. The partial shift she'd been practicing it. Could she do it now, when it mattered? Could she protect the pups? Silver light flared beneath her skin as she called her wolf forward. The shift came easier this time, fueled by pure desperation. Her claws extended, her senses sharpened, and she felt power coursing through her veins. "Stay back," Hope growled, her voice deeper with her wolf so close to the surface. The figure laughed. "Oh, they said you'd develop teeth. Good. This will be more interesting than just killing an Omega." 3 more figures appeared from the smoke, surrounding her. All of them moving with predatory grace. All of them focused on her and the pups with deadly intent. Hope's mind went cold and clear. She couldn't fight 4 trained killers. Couldn't run with the pups slowing her down. Couldn't— the shrine. It was maybe 100 yards through the forest. If she could reach it, if the ancient magic would respond again, she bolted. Behind her, the assassins gave chase. Hope ran like her life depended on it because it did. The pups bounced against her chest, fully awake now and crying, their fear feeding into hers through the bond. Trees blurred past. Branches tore at her clothes. And behind her, getting closer, she could hear them laughing. "You can't outrun us, little Omega. The pups die tonight, along with you." Hope's lungs burned, her legs screamed. But the shrine was ahead, she could see it through the trees, the pillars glowing faintly in the darkness. Just a little farther, just a little. Something slammed into her from the side, sending her sprawling. Hope twisted mid-fall, protecting the pups with her body. She hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her shoulder, but managed to roll back to her feet. The hooded figure from before stood between her and the shrine. End of the line. Hope's wolf snarled, And without thinking, she called on that warmth in her chest, that silver flame. Power erupted from her hands, wild and uncontrolled, slamming into the assassin with the force of a freight train. The figure flew backward, crashing into a tree. But the other three were already there, circling her like wolves around wounded prey. "Interesting," one of them said. "But untrained power is just noise." They attacked as one. Hope fought with everything she had, claws, teeth, that raw silver power. She managed to catch one across the face, sending him reeling. Dodged another's strike by inches. But there were too many. And she was too new to this, too unpracticed. A blade sliced across her ribs, and Hope screamed. The pups screamed with her, their cries piercing the night. And that's when everything changed. The bond between them exploded outward, amplified by their combined terror. Silver light erupted from Hope's body in a wave, and she felt the pup's power joining with hers, raw, ancient, absolute. The assassins were thrown back like leaves in a storm. The shrine blazed to life, responding to the surge of magic. And Hope felt something shift deep inside her, something clicking into place. Awakening fully for the first time. "Hope." Isaac's voice cut through the chaos. He burst into the clearing in full wolf form, massive, black-furred, absolutely deadly. Behind him came a dozen warriors, all of them shifting mid-run. The assassins scattered, vanishing into the forest like smoke. Isaac shifted back to human form and ran to Hope, his hands immediately checking her for injuries. When he found the cut across her ribs, his expression went murderous. "Who were they?" he demanded, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "I don't know." Hope clutched the crying pups, trying to soothe them despite her own terror. "They came for us. They wanted to kill us." Isaac pulled her against his chest, careful of her injury, his arms coming around both her and the pups. "I've got you. You're safe now. I've got you." But even as he said it, both of them knew the truth. She wasn't safe. The pups weren't safe, because whoever wanted them dead had just proven they could strike anywhere, anytime. And next time, Hope might not be strong enough to stop them. Chapter 6. Hearts claiming hearts. Isaac carried her. Hope wanted to protest, wanted to insist she could walk on her own. But the truth was her legs wouldn't hold her. The adrenaline had drained away, leaving nothing but trembling exhaustion and pain that radiated from her ribs with every breath. The pups had finally quieted, exhausted from their own terror, sleeping fitfully against her chest. Their tiny heartbeats were the only thing keeping Hope grounded as Isaac moved through the camp with purpose, barking orders to warriors who scattered to follow his commands. "Search the perimeter. I want to know how they got past our defenses. Double the guard on all entry points. Someone wake Carrie. Now." He didn't take Hope back to her tent, the one that now reeked of smoke and conspiracy. Instead, he carried her to his own quarters, a larger structure at the camp's center, and kicked the door shut behind them with enough force to rattle the frame. "Isaac," Hope started, but he silenced her with a look. "Don't." His voice was rough, dangerous. "Don't tell me you're fine. Don't tell me it's just a scratch. Don't tell me anything except where else you're hurt." Hope swallowed hard. She'd never seen him like this, barely controlled fury radiating from every line of his body. His hands shook slightly as he set her down on his bed, as he stepped back and ran both hands through his hair. "I should have been there," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have refused Willa's demands. Should have kept you with me. Then they would have attacked when you were close enough to be a target too." Hope shifted carefully, wincing at the movement. "Isaac, this isn't your fault. They would have found a way regardless. You could have died." He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "You and the pups could have died. And I was on the other side of camp arguing with council members about protocol while assassins were hunting you." The tent flap opened, and Carrie rushed in, carrying a medical bag. She took one look at Hope's blood-soaked side, and immediately got to work, cutting away the ruined fabric of Hope's shirt. "Out," Carrie said to Isaac without looking up. "No, Your Majesty, I need space to work." I said no. Isaac's tone left no room for argument. "I'm staying." Carrie's eyes flicked between them, reading something Hope couldn't name, and the tension stretched tight between them. Then she nodded. "Fine. But sit down before you collapse. You're no good to anyone if you pass out." Isaac sat, but his eyes never left Hope as Carrie examined the wound. The cut was long but not deep, a slice across her ribs that had bled dramatically but missed anything vital. Carrie cleaned it with practiced efficiency, her hands gentle despite her gruff manner. "You got lucky," Carrie said. "Another inch, and this would have punctured a lung. As it is, you'll need stitches and rest." She glanced at the sleeping pups. "How are they?" "Scared but unhurt." Hope's voice was barely above a whisper. The reality of what had almost happened was starting to sink in, and her hands had begun to shake. They cried. Their fear fed into mine through the bond. And something happened. The power amplified. "The pup's power combined with yours," Isaac said, his voice tight. "That's why the shrine responded so strongly. They're not just bonded to you, they're channeling through you." "Which makes her even more of a target," Carrie muttered, beginning to stitch. "Whoever wants these pups dead now knows that killing Hope kills all 4 of them at once." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "No one is killing anyone," Isaac said with absolute conviction. "From now on, Hope stays with me. In my quarters. Under my personal guard. I don't care what the council says. Isaac, the tribunal, is postponed until I'm satisfied with our security." His eyes blazed. "They can't test you if you're dead. Willa. And her counsel can wait." Carrie finished the last stitch and tied it off. "There. Keep it clean, don't strain yourself. And for the love of the goddess, don't get into any more fights for at least a week." She packed up her supplies and stood. "I'll bring food and supplies for the pups." "Your Majesty?" A word outside. Isaac followed her out, and through the canvas walls, Hope could hear their muffled conversation. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear, Carrie warning him about something, Isaac refusing to listen. Hope looked down at the pups, at their sleeping faces, and felt tears burning behind her eyes. They were so small, so innocent. They didn't deserve any of this, didn't deserve to be hunted, to be used as pawns in games they couldn't understand. "I'm sorry," she whispered to them. "I'm so sorry I can't give you the peace you deserve." The white-patched female stirred, her golden eyes blinking open. She looked up at Hope and made a small, contented sound, then nuzzled closer and fell back asleep. It was such a simple gesture of trust, and it shattered what little composure Hope had left. The tears came then, silent, hot, unstoppable, for the parents these pups had lost, for the childhood Hope had never had, for the impossible situation they were all trapped in, for the fear that she wasn't strong enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't enough, period. Isaac returned to find her crying, and something in his expression cracked open. Hope. He was beside her in an instant, pulling her carefully into his arms, mindful of her injury. "It's all right, you're safe now, I've got you." "I was so scared," Hope admitted against his chest. I thought they were going to kill us, that I wouldn't be fast enough or strong enough to stop them. But you were." Isaac's hand came up to cradle the back of her head, his fingers threading through her hair. "You fought 4 trained assassins and survived. You protected the pups without hesitation. Hope, do you understand how extraordinary that is? I got lucky." "No." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "You were brave. There's a difference." Hope looked up at him, at this powerful man who kept calling her remarkable when she felt anything but. His face was so close to hers, his eyes so intense, and something in the way he was looking at her, like she was precious, like she mattered, like he. "Isaac," she whispered, and didn't know what she was asking for, but he seemed to know anyway. His forehead pressed against hers, and they breathed together for a moment, sharing space, sharing warmth. Hope felt her wolf rising, not in fear or defense, but in longing, in recognition, in the desperate need to close the last few inches between them. And, "I can't," Isaac said roughly, even as his hands tightened on her. "Hope, if I start this, if I let myself." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "You deserve better than a king who can't promise you safety, who brings danger to your door just by being near you." "I'm already in danger," Hope pointed out, her voice steadier than she felt. "Being near you or not near you doesn't change that. It changes everything." Isaac pulled back, and Hope felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. "The council is already suspicious of my judgment regarding you. If they think he stood abruptly, pacing the length of the tent. They'll use it against you, against us. They'll say you've compromised me, that you're manipulating me through the mate bond. Hope's breath caught. The mate bond. Isaac froze, realizing what he'd said. When he turned back to her, his expression was raw with emotion. He was no longer trying to hide. You feel it too, he said quietly. Don't tell me you don't. That pull between us, that recognition. His voice dropped lower. Hope, from the moment I saw you at the shrine, my wolf has been screaming that you're mine, and every day since has only made it stronger. Hope's heart hammered against her ribs. But we can't. No. Isaac's smile was bitter. We can't. Because I'm a king with responsibilities. Because you're bonded to royal heirs who need you focused and safe. Because the council would tear you apart if they thought you were using a mate bond to influence me. He moved back to her, kneeling so they were eye level. So we don't. We ignore it. We pretend it doesn't exist. We do what's right instead of what we want. And what if I don't want to ignore it? The words tumbled out before Hope could stop them. What if I'm tired of doing what's right, when right means being alone? Isaac's eyes darkened with something that made Hope's entire body heat. Don't say things like that. Not when I'm already barely holding on. Then don't hold on. Hope reached for him, her hand cupping his cheek. Isaac, I've spent my entire life being told to know my place. To accept less. To be grateful for scraps. And maybe this thing between us is impossible. Maybe it'll cause problems we can't fix. But for once in my life, I want to choose something that's mine. I want to choose you. For a moment, Isaac looked tortured, torn between duty and desire, between what he was supposed to do and what he desperately wanted. Hope watched the war play out across his features, saw the exact moment he made his decision. Hope. A soft knock at the entrance interrupted him. Carrie's voice called through the canvas. Food for the pups. And you should both eat something too. The moment shattered. Isaac stood, running a hand over his face, and moved to accept the supplies from Carrie. When he returned, his expression had smoothed into something more neutral, more controlled. The king's mask firmly back in place. You should rest, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. I'll take the chair. The pups will need feeding in a few hours. Isaac. Please, Hope. His voice was rough. Just rest. So she did, because what else could she do? She settled back against the pillows, the pups warm against her chest, and watched Isaac move around the tent with careful precision, setting up his makeshift bed, banking the fire, doing everything except look at her. But as Hope drifted toward sleep, exhausted and aching, and emotionally wrung out, she heard him whisper so softly she almost missed it. You're already mine. That's the problem. Hope woke to pale dawn light filtering through the tent, and Isaac's chair empty. Panic surged before she realized the pups were still safe against her chest. Still breathing steadily, still whole. But Isaac was gone, and Hope felt his absence like a wound. A note sat on the table beside her, written in bold, decisive handwriting. Had to meet with the scouts about last night's attack. Carrie will bring breakfast. Don't leave the tent. I mean it. Hope stared at the note, at the careful distance in its tone, and felt something in her chest crack. Last night he'd admitted to feeling the mate bond. This morning he was back to giving orders and maintaining walls. Maybe he was right. Maybe this thing between them was too complicated, too dangerous. Maybe. The tent flap opened, and Carrie entered carrying a tray. Morning. How's the patient? Confused, Hope admitted. And sore. But alive. Those are all good signs. Carrie set down the tray porridge. Fruit, bread, and tea that smelled like heaven. Eat. You need your strength for what's coming. The tribunal, among other things. Carrie sat across from her, her expression serious. Hope. I need to tell you something. Something Isaac doesn't know yet, because I only found out this morning. Hope's stomach dropped. What? The assassins last night? We found one of their cloaks in the forest. It bore a mark. Carrie pulled a piece of fabric from her pocket and laid it on the bed. This mark. Hope stared at the symbol, a twisted spiral surrounding a crescent moon. She didn't recognize it, but something about it made her skin crawl. What does it mean? It's the mark of the Shadow Court, Carrie said quietly. A group of wolves who rejected the goddess's laws centuries ago. They believe in a different kind of power, one that comes from blood sacrifice and dark rituals. We thought they'd been wiped out. She paused. Apparently we were wrong. Hope's hands tightened on the pups. Why would they want to kill these three? Because royal blood is powerful. Carrie's voice was grim. Especially the blood of triplets. If the Shadow Court is reforming, if they're gathering strength, sacrificing 3 royal heirs would give them more power than anything else. Power to challenge the goddess herself. The room spun. This was bigger than Hope had imagined. Bigger than territory politics or bloodline disputes. This was about the very foundations of their world. Does Isaac know? He will soon. I sent word. Carrie stood. But Hope, you need to understand something. The Shadow Court doesn't just want the pups dead. They want you dead too. Because you're bonded to them. And that bond is the only thing preventing them from performing their ritual. As long as you're alive and connected to those pups, they can't use them. So, I'm not just their protector, Hope said slowly. I'm their shield. Exactly. Which means the Shadow Court will keep coming until either I'm dead, or they are. Carrie nodded grimly. Isaac's not going to like this. He's already barely holding it together after last night. When he finds out you're specifically being targeted, that you're the key to keeping the pups alive. She shook her head. Let's just say his self-control where you're concerned is hanging by a thread. Hope thought about last night. About the mate bond confession. About the way Isaac had looked at her like she was something precious and impossible all at once. What am I supposed to do? She asked quietly. Train harder. Get stronger. Learn to control that power. Carrie moved toward the exit, then paused. And Hope? When Isaac gets back and tries to lock you away in a protective bubble, fight him on it. He needs you strong and capable, not safe and useless. The pups need you that way too. She left. And Hope was alone with the pups. With her spiraling thoughts. And with the terrifying knowledge that she wasn't just protecting 3 small lives anymore. She was standing between ancient evil and the destruction of everything she'd come to care about. The pups woke hungry, and Hope fed them with shaking hands, singing those old songs to keep herself calm. They drank greedily, their tiny paws kneading against her as they ate. And Hope felt that bond humming between them stronger now, more vital. I won't let them hurt you, she promised them. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to become, I won't let them hurt you. The white-patched female looked up at her with those impossibly wise golden eyes, and Hope could have sworn she understood, that all 3 of them understood the weight of what was coming. They finished eating and Hope was just setting the bottles aside when the tent flap burst open. Isaac stood there, breathing hard, his hair wild, his eyes blazing with emotion. He looked at her, really looked, and Hope saw everything he was feeling written across his face. Fear, fury, desperation, and underneath it all, that fierce, undeniable need. I know about the Shadow Court, he said, his voice rough. I know what they want. What you are to the pups, Isaac, and I know what Carrie told you. About me barely holding it together. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, kneeling beside the bed. She's right. I am barely holding on, because every instinct I have is screaming at me to grab you and these pups and run somewhere they can never find you, to hide you away where nothing can touch you. His hands framed her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. But I can't do that. Because you're right, you're already in danger whether I'm near you or not, and because hiding you away won't make you strong enough to survive what's coming. So what do? Hope whispered. We train, we prepare, we make you strong enough that the Shadow Court regrets ever targeting you. His forehead pressed against hers. And we stop pretending that this thing between us doesn't exist. Because Hope, if we're going to war, if we're going to face down ancient evil together, I need you to know that I'm with you. Not just as your king, as your mate. Hope's breath caught. The council can go to hell, Isaac said fiercely. I'm done choosing duty over you. Done pretending I don't feel what I feel. Done being the perfect king, when what I need is to be yours. Isaac. Hope's hands covered his, her heart hammering. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. His eyes held hers, And in them Hope saw her future terrifying and beautiful and absolutely certain. "You're my mate, Hope Horn, and I'm claiming you. Right here. Right now. If you'll have me." Hope thought about everything that led her here. Every rejection. Every moment of pain. Every time she'd been told she wasn't enough. And she thought about this man, this impossible, wonderful man who looked at her like she hung the moon and called her his. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll have you." Isaac's smile was brilliant and fierce, and when he kissed her, Hope felt the mate bond snap into place like a lock clicking home. Silver light exploded around them, mixing with the gold of Isaac's alpha power, and the pups stirred and hummed with approval. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Hope felt changed, complete. Like a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing had finally found its way home. "We're going to survive this," Isaac promised against her lips. "All of us. Together." And for the first time since this whole impossible journey began, Hope actually believed it. Chapter 7. Truth Laid Bare. The mate bond changed everything. Hope felt it constantly now. Isaac's presence like a golden thread connecting them. Warm and unbreakable. She could sense his emotions, his location, even the rhythm of his heartbeat when she focused. And she knew he felt the same from her, could feel the silver flame burning steady in her chest. It should have been beautiful. It was beautiful, but it also painted a target on both their backs. "The council is demanding an audience," Carrie said 3 hours after the bond completed. She stood at the tent entrance, her expression grim. Elder Willa found out about the mate bond. The whole camp knows, actually. That kind of power surge isn't exactly subtle. Hope sat on Isaac's bed, the pup sleeping peacefully in her lap, and felt her stomach drop. How angry is she? She's calling it proof of manipulation. Carrie moved inside, keeping her voice low. "Says you've compromised the Alpha King through dark magic. That the bond was forced. That you're using it to control him. That's insane." Hope looked at Isaac, who stood at the tent's far end, his jaw clenched tight. "Isaac, tell her. I've already told her." His voice was cold, controlled fury. "She doesn't care about truth. She cares about maintaining power. And a king with a mate bond to an Omega threatens everything the council has built their authority on. So what do? We face them." Isaac turned to look at her, and Hope saw the determination in his eyes. "Together, we prove that this bond wasn't forced, that you haven't manipulated me, and that their prejudices don't dictate my choices. And if they don't believe us, then we deal with the consequences." He crossed to her, taking her hand. "Hope, I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. They're going to say terrible things about you. About us. They might even call for my removal as king." Hope's breath caught. "Isaac, I can't let you lose everything because of me. You're not making me lose anything." His grip tightened. "I'm choosing you. Choosing us. And whatever comes from that choice, we face it together." The council meeting was held in the camp's center, beneath open sky so all the wolves could witness. Hope walked beside Isaac, the pups secured in their sling, and felt hundreds of eyes tracking her movement. Some looked curious. Others hostile. A very few looked almost approving. The council sat in a semicircle on raised platforms, 7 wolves, all of them ancient and powerful. Elder Willa sat at the center, her expression carved from ice. "Alpha King Isaac Bowman," she said formally, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "You stand accused of compromising your position through an unnatural mate bond formed under suspicious circumstances. How do you answer?" "There's nothing unnatural about a mate bond," Isaac said calmly. "And the only suspicious circumstance is your refusal to accept what the goddess herself has ordained." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "The goddess does not ordain bonds between kings and omegas," another council member said, an older man named Craig Stevens. "It goes against the natural order, against centuries of tradition." "Then perhaps your traditions are wrong." Hope heard herself speak before she could stop. Every eye turned to her, and she fought the urge to shrink back. "With respect, Elder Stevens, the goddess chose me to bond with royal heirs, chose me to activate the Shrine of First Mothers, chose me to carry the silver flame. Are you suggesting she made a mistake?" Craig's face flushed red. "You dare question. I dare question anyone who puts their traditions above the goddess's will." Hope interrupted, her voice stronger now. The pups stirred at her chest, responding to her emotion, and silver light began to flicker at her fingertips. You say this bond is unnatural, but I felt it snap into place like destiny. I felt the goddess's approval in every fiber of my being. So either she's blessed this union, or you're calling her judgment into question. The silence was deafening. Then Elder Willa spoke, her voice like winter frost. Pretty words from a clever Omega. But words prove nothing. We demand a trial by truth. Hope felt Isaac tense beside her. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. Willa's smile was sharp. If this bond is genuine, if Hope hasn't manipulated you through dark magic or forced connection, then she should have no problem submitting to the trial of clarity. Ancient magic that reveals truth from deception. If she's innocent, the trial will prove it. If she's not. Willa's pause was deliberate. Then the bond will be severed, and she'll be exiled from all territories for her crimes. Hope's blood turned to ice. Severing a mate bond was torture, she'd heard the stories. Wolves who survived it were never whole again, forever feeling the phantom ache of their severed connection. I won't allow it, Isaac said flatly. You don't have a choice. Willa gestured to the other council members. All in favor of the trial of clarity? 6 hands rose. Only one councilwoman, a younger female named Gina Valentine, kept her hand down. The council has spoken, Willa announced. The trial will commence at sunset. Until then, Hope Horn will be confined under guard to prevent any interference. This is wrong, Gina spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension. You're punishing her for existing, for being what the goddess made her. We're ensuring the integrity of our king, Willa countered. Unless you'd like to join her in confinement, Councilwoman Valentine. Gina fell silent, but her eyes found Hope's, and in them Hope saw sympathy, maybe even alliance. Isaac looked like he wanted to fight, wanted to refuse the council's authority entirely. But Hope squeezed his hand, drawing his attention. It's okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. I have nothing to hide. Hope, I trust the goddess, she said, louder now so everyone could hear. I trust that she'll reveal the truth. And I trust that when this trial proves I've done nothing wrong, you'll all remember this moment. Remember that you condemned me without evidence. That you put your pride before truth. She released Isaac's hand and stepped forward, facing Willa directly. I submit to your trial, but when I prove my innocence, I expect an apology. From all of you. Willa's expression didn't change, but Hope caught the flash of something in her eyes. Respect, maybe. Or anger that Hope wasn't cowering. We'll see, was all she said. They locked Hope in a tent at the camp's edge, not Isaac's quarters, but a smaller structure with 2 guards posted outside. The pups fussed at the confinement, sensing her anxiety, and Hope did her best to soothe them. It's all right, she murmured, rocking them gently. Everything's going to be all right. But she wasn't sure she believed it. The hours crawled past. Hope fed the pups, changed them, sang to them. Tried not to think about what the trial of clarity actually entailed. Tried not to feel Isaac's fury through the bond. He was somewhere nearby. She could sense him, radiating protective anger. As the sun began its descent, Carrie appeared with food Hope couldn't eat. You need to know something, Carrie said quietly, glancing at the guards outside. The trial of clarity isn't just about revealing lies. It strips away all defenses, all walls. You'll be completely vulnerable, every memory, every fear, every secret exposed for everyone to see. Hope's hands tightened on the pups. Everything? Everything. Carrie's expression was sympathetic. The Clearwater pack, the years of abuse, the rejection, all of it will be visible. Are you prepared for that? No. Hope wasn't prepared for that at all. Wasn't prepared for Isaac to see exactly how damaged she was, how much pain she'd endured, how many times she'd been told she was worthless. I don't have a choice, Hope said quietly. You always have a choice, Carrie leaned closer. Listen to me. The trial shows truth, but it shows the truth you believe. If you go in there believing you're broken, believing you're not worthy of Isaac, believing any of the lies they've told you, that's what everyone will see. She gripped Hope's shoulder. But if you go in there knowing your worth, knowing you deserve this bond, knowing you're exactly who the goddess intended you to be. That's what they'll see instead. How do I do that? Hope whispered. How do I just stop believing everything I've ever been told? You don't stop believing it. Carrie's smile was sad. You just believe in something stronger. Believe in those pups who chose you. Believe in Isaac who claimed you. Believe in the goddess who marked you. Her grip tightened. Believe in yourself, Hope, even if it's the first time in your life. She left. And Hope was alone with her spiraling thoughts, and 3 sleeping pups who trusted her completely. Believe in yourself. Hope closed her eyes and reached for that warmth in her chest, the silver flame. The bond with the pups, the golden thread connecting her to Isaac. She thought about everything that had happened since that rainy night in the forest. The shrine responding, the pups choosing her, Isaac calling her remarkable. Maybe Carrie was right. Maybe the truth wasn't that Hope was worthless. Maybe the truth was that the Clearwater Pack had been wrong, that their rejection said more about them than it did about her. Maybe the truth was that Hope Horn had always been exactly who she was supposed to be. She was still trying to convince herself when the guards came for her. The trial ground was the same clearing where the gathering had been held, but now it looked different, ominous. 7 stone pillars had been erected in a circle, each one glowing with ancient symbols. In the center stood a crystal basin filled with water that shimmered with unnatural light. The entire camp surrounded the circle. Hundreds of wolves, all of them watching, waiting to see if Hope was innocent or guilty, if she was worthy or corrupt. Elder Willa stood at the basin's edge. Hope Horn, step forward. Hope walked into the circle with the pups still strapped to her chest. She wouldn't be separated from them. Not now, not ever. The trial of clarity requires physical contact with the sacred water, Willa explained. Once you touch it, your truth will be revealed. All of it. There's no hiding, no lying, no manipulation. Only what is. I understand, Hope said, her voice steady. Isaac pushed through the crowd, stopping at the circle's edge. The guards blocked him from entering, but Hope felt his presence like an anchor through the bond. I'm with you, his voice echoed in her mind, and Hope realized they could communicate through the mate bond. No matter what they see, no matter what's revealed, I'm with you. I know, Hope sent back. I love you. She felt his shock, then his fierce joy. I love you too. Now show them who you are. Hope stepped to the basin and plunged both hands into the water. The world exploded into light and memory. She saw herself as a child 5 years old, watching her parents die in a raid. Saw the Clearwater Pack taking her in not out of kindness but obligation. Saw herself growing up invisible, unwanted, told again and again that she was burden, omega, worthless. The crowd gasped as the memories played out in the air above the basin like a projection. Hope felt their pity, their horror, their judgment, but she didn't look away. She watched herself at 13, trying to shift for the first time and failing. Watched the other young wolves laughing, calling her broken. Watched herself crying alone in the forest, begging the goddess to make her normal. Then the memories shifted. She saw herself at 23, running through the storm. Saw the moment she found the pups and chose to save them instead of herself. Saw the shrine awakening, the bond forming, the silver flame igniting in her chest. And she saw the truth beneath all of it. That every rejection, every moment of pain, every year of suffering had led her here. Had forged her into someone strong enough to protect these pups. Had made her exactly who she needed to be. The memories kept coming. Hope fighting the assassins. Hope standing up to the council. Hope accepting the mate bond with Isaac. And through it all, one truth shone brighter than everything else. She wasn't broken. She'd never been broken. She'd been becoming. The water in the basin began to glow silver and gold, responding to the truth of who she was. The pillars around her blazed with light, and Hope felt the goddess's presence like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then the vision changed, and Hope saw something she hadn't expected. She saw Elder Willa, decades younger, standing in this same circle, saw her facing her own trial of clarity, and she saw the truth that Willa had been hiding for 50 years, that she was half-blood Omega herself, that she'd spent her entire life denying it, hiding it, projecting her self-hatred onto other Omegas to feel powerful. The crowd erupted into shocked murmurs. Willa's face went pale as stone. That's not Willa, stammered. But the trial didn't lie, couldn't lie, and everyone had seen the truth. Hope pulled her hands from the water, and the visions faded. She stood in the center of the circle, silver light still glimmering on her skin, and met Willa's eyes. "You built your power on rejecting what you are," Hope said quietly. "I built mine on accepting it. That's the difference between us." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Gina Valentine stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "The trial of clarity has spoken. Hope Horn is innocent of all charges. Her bond is genuine. Her power is blessed by the goddess." She turned to face the crowd. "And anyone who continues to question her right to stand beside our king is questioning the goddess herself." The crowd's reaction was mixed, some nodding in agreement, others looking shaken, a few still suspicious. But the trial had done what it was meant to do. It had revealed truth, and the truth was that Hope Horn belonged. Isaac was beside her in seconds, pulling her into his arms, mindful of the pups between them. "You're incredible," he murmured against her hair. "Absolutely incredible." But Hope wasn't watching Isaac. She was watching Willa, who stood frozen at the basin's edge, her carefully constructed life crumbling around her. "Elder Willa," Hope called out, "I won't expose your secret. I won't use it against you. But I hope you'll remember this moment the next time you judge someone for being what they are." It was mercy, and everyone knew it. Willa stared at her for a long moment, emotions warring across her face. Then she gave a single, sharp nod and turned away, walking through the parting crowd with her spine straight and her head high. Hope had won, but she'd given her enemy the chance to walk away with dignity. It was the kind of power the council had never seen before, the kind that came from strength, not cruelty, and it changed everything. The celebration that night was subdued but genuine. Wolves who had doubted Hope now approached with cautious respect. Gina Valentine officially declared her support, bringing her faction of the council with her. Even Craig Stevens grudgingly acknowledged that the trial had proven Hope's innocence. But Hope couldn't fully relax, because through the bond, she felt Isaac's unease. Something was wrong. They returned to his quarters after midnight, the pups finally asleep, and Isaac's expression was grim. "The scouts found something," he said without preamble. "Evidence that the Shadow Court has been operating in the territories for months. That they have wolves embedded in the packs, feeding them information." Hope's blood ran cold. "You think someone here is working with them?" "I know someone here is working with them." Isaac pulled out a piece of parchment, his jaw tight. "We found this in the forest where the assassins escaped. It's a list of targets. You, the pups, and..." He paused. "And me. They're planning another attack. Not just an attack." Isaac's eyes met hers. "An assault. They're gathering forces for a full offensive. They plan to strike in 3 days, during the new moon, when shadow magic is strongest." He moved closer, framing her face with his hands. "Hope, this is what we've been preparing for. The real battle. And I need you ready." "I am ready," Hope said with more confidence than she felt. "I know." Isaac's smile was fierce and proud. "But we're going to make sure. Tomorrow, I'm taking you to the archive. We're going to unlock the full extent of your power." His forehead pressed against hers. "Because when the Shadow Court comes for us, when they try to take you and these pups from me, I need you able to burn them all to ash." Hope felt the silver flame respond to his words, flaring hot in her chest. "Then let's burn them," she whispered. And Isaac's answering smile was absolutely feral. Chapter 8. When the Flame Ignites. Dawn broke cold and clear over the archive of First Mothers. Hope stood at the stone circle's center, the pups secure in their sling, while Isaac paced the perimeter studying the ancient carvings. They'd arrived before first light, leaving the camp under Carrie's watchful guard and a dozen of Isaac's most trusted warriors. "The archive holds more than just prophecies," Isaac said, trailing his fingers over symbols that glowed at his touch. "It's a training ground, a place where our ancestors learned to channel their gifts." He stopped at the largest pillar, the one covered in spiraling flames. "This one is yours." The Flame-Bearer's pillar. Hope approached slowly, her heart hammering. The carved flames seemed to dance in the early morning light, and as she got closer, they began to glow brighter, responding to her presence. "What do I do?" she asked. "Touch it," Let it show you what you're capable of. Hope hesitated for only a moment, then pressed both palms against the stone. The world disappeared. She stood in a vast space filled with silver fire, not destructive, but alive, conscious, ancient. And in the flames, Hope saw them. The flame bearers who had come before her. Dozens of women stretching back through centuries, each one marked by the goddess, each one carrying the silver flame. Welcome, sister, their voices echoed as one. You've been awakened. Now you must learn to truly burn. I don't know how, Hope admitted to the vision. I can barely control what I have, because you're afraid of it. Afraid of what it means to have power when you've spent so long being powerless. The nearest figure stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and eyes like molten gold. But power isn't something to fear, child. It's something to claim, to wield, to trust. I don't know if I can. Then let us show you. The flames surged, and Hope gasped as knowledge poured into her mind. Not just theory, but muscle memory, instinct, centuries of accumulated wisdom. She saw how to call the flame, how to shape it, how to let it flow through her without burning herself up. She felt the connection between her power and the pups, understood how their bond amplified everything she was. The silver flame wasn't just protection. It was transformation, creation, the ability to forge new paths, to break old chains, to burn away everything false until only truth remained. You are not a shield, little sister, the ancient flame-bearer said. You are a sword, and it's time you remembered how to cut. The vision released her, and Hope stumbled back from the pillar, gasping. Isaac caught her immediately, his arms steadying her. Hope? What happened? They showed me. Hope breathed, her eyes wide with wonder and terror. The flame-bearers before me. They showed me everything. She looked down at her hands, which were glowing with silver light that didn't fade. Isaac, I can feel it now, really feel it. The power isn't separate from me. It is me. Can you control it? Hope smiled, and it was fierce. Watch. She stepped back, closed her eyes, and reached for the silver flame. It came willingly this time, eagerly, like a wolf finally allowed to run. Silver fire erupted from her hands, but instead of wild and chaotic, it moved with purpose, with precision. Hope shaped it into a sphere, then a blade, then a wall of flame that rose 20 feet high before she let it dissipate into sparks. When she opened her eyes, Isaac was staring at her with something between awe and hunger. Goddess above, he murmured. You're magnificent. I'm ready, Hope said, and meant it. When the shadow court comes, I'll be ready. Isaac crossed to her, pulling her close despite the heat still radiating from her skin. They're going to regret ever targeting you. They already should. Hope rose on her toes to kiss him, pouring everything she felt through the bond. Love, determination, absolute certainty that they were going to survive this. Now teach me to fight. Really fight. Because I'm done being prey. They spent the day at the archive, Isaac teaching Hope combat techniques while she learned to integrate her power with physical movement. The pups watched from a safe distance, sleeping peacefully while their protector transformed into a warrior. By midday, Hope could fight in partial shift while channeling the silver flame. By afternoon, she could hold a full defensive barrier while moving. By evening, she'd learned to use her power offensively, precise strikes that could incapacitate without killing or kill if necessary. Again, Isaac commanded as the sun began its descent. But this time, don't hold back. Hit me with everything. Isaac. I could hurt you. You won't. Trust yourself, Hope. Trust your control. So Hope did. She gathered the silver flame, felt it building in her chest like a sun about to go supernova, and released it directly at Isaac. He shifted mid-charge, his alpha power rising to meet her flame. Gold and silver collided in an explosion of light and force that shook the ground. When the dust settled, both of them were standing, breathing hard, grinning at each other like feral things. Perfect, Isaac said, shifting back to human. That's exactly what you'll need. They returned to camp as darkness fell, and Hope immediately sensed something was wrong. The warriors were on high alert, weapons drawn, formations tight. Carrie met them at the perimeter, her face grim. We caught a spy, she said without preamble. One of our own, sending messages to someone outside the camp. He's being held for questioning. Who? Isaac's voice was deadly calm. Glenn Mackenzie. The beta from Clearwater Pack. Hope's blood turned to ice. Glenn had been part of the hunting party that first chased her. Had been there the night everything changed. And he'd been here, in camp, with access to everything. He's been feeding them information the entire time, Carrie continued. Troop movements, your schedules, Hope's training progress, everything they'd need to plan an assault. Where is he? Isaac's power was radiating off him in waves, making lesser wolves cringe. The holding tent. But Isaac, there's more. Carrie's expression darkened. He's not alone. We found evidence of at least 2 other collaborators still unidentified. The Shadow Court has deeper roots here than we thought. Hope felt the pups stirring against her chest, responding to her rising fear. She forced herself to breathe, to stay calm. When are they coming? Tonight, a new voice said. They turned to find Gina Valentine approaching, flanked by 2 warriors. I've been running my own investigation since the trial. The new moon is tonight, and Glenn confirmed it before we locked him down. The Shadow Court is gathering forces 3 miles north. They plan to strike at midnight when shadow magic peaks. How many? Isaac demanded. At least 50. Gina's jaw was tight. Maybe more. All of them trained. All of them committed to their dark goddess, and they're bringing something else. Glenn wouldn't say what. But he seemed terrified of it. Isaac's hand found Hope's, squeezing tight. We need to evacuate the civilians. Get them to the southern border. No, Hope interrupted. All eyes turned to her. We can't run. The Shadow Court will just follow. They'll hunt us down one by one until they get what they want. She looked at Isaac, at Carrie, at Gina. We make our stand here. At the archive, where the ancient magic is strongest, and where I can draw on the Flame-Bearer's power. You want to use yourself as bait, Isaac said flatly. I want to end this. Hope's voice was steel. They want me and the pups? Fine. Let them come. Let them face the silver flame on ground that was made for it. Let them learn what happens when you threaten what's mine. Isaac looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Hope's expression stopped him. This wasn't the frightened Omega who'd run through the forest 6 days ago. This was a woman who'd claimed her power, her purpose, her place in the world, and she was done running. All right, Isaac said finally. We fight, but we do it smart. Hope and the pups at the Archive Center, protected by our best warriors. I'll lead the outer defense with the alphas. Carrie, you coordinate the healers and support. Gina, your forces take the western approach. That's their most likely entry point. What about the unidentified collaborators? Carrie asked. We assume everyone is suspect, except those in this circle. Isaac's gaze swept over them. Trust no one else. If someone acts suspicious during the battle, take them down. We can sort truth from deception after we survive. The next hours passed in controlled chaos. Warriors prepared for battle, checking weapons and forming defensive lines. Civilians were moved to the safest part of camp with heavy guard. And Hope stood at the archive, the pups sleeping peacefully against her chest and prepared for war. Isaac found her just before midnight, his armor on, his eyes glowing with alpha power. Whatever happens tonight, he said, pulling her close. I need you to promise me something. Anything. If it comes down to a choice between saving me or saving yourself, and the pups, you choose yourself. When Hope started to protest, he pressed a finger to her lips. Promise me, Hope. The pups need you, the territories need you, and I need to know that if I fall, you'll keep fighting. Tears burned Hope's eyes. Don't talk like that. You're not going to fall. Promise me anyway. I promise, Hope whispered. But Isaac, you're not allowed to die. Do you hear me? We're going to win this. And then we're going to raise these pups together, and we're going to build something beautiful from all this chaos. So you don't get to sacrifice yourself tonight. Isaac's smile was sad and fierce all at once. I'll do my best. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, pouring everything he felt through the bond. Love, fear, hope, pride. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. I love you, Isaac said. I love you too. Hope touched his face, memorizing every line. Now go lead your warriors. And I'll be here, burning anything that tries to hurt what's ours. Isaac left, and Hope stood alone at the archive's center, silver flames already dancing at her fingertips. Around her, 20 warriors formed protective circles, the best fighters Isaac had, all of them willing to die to keep her and the pups safe. Midnight approached. The forest grew silent, that unnatural silence that comes before violence. Hope could feel the shadow court gathering, could sense their dark magic pressing against the archive's ancient wards like oil against water. Then the attack began. They came from all sides at once, shadow wolves, their fur black as night, their eyes glowing red with corruption. Behind them came the human fighters, faces hidden behind dark masks, weapons dripping with poison. And at their center walked a woman who radiated power so dark it made Hope's skin crawl. Tall, ancient, her eyes like bottomless pits. She wore robes covered in symbols that hurt to look at, and in her hands she carried a blade forged from what looked like solidified shadow. The flame bearer, the woman's voice carried across the battlefield, somehow audible over the sounds of fighting. How delightful. The goddess's little weapon, standing exactly where we want her. Who are you? Hope called back, her voice steady despite her fear. I am Reba Middleton, High Priestess of the Shadow Court. The woman smiled, revealing teeth that had been filed to points. And you, little Omega, are going to give me those pups, either willingly, or I'll pry them from your corpse. Option 3, Hope said, and let the silver flame explode around her. You die trying. Reba laughed, and the sound was like breaking bones. Oh, I'm going to enjoy destroying you. She attacked. Shadow magic slammed into Hope's defenses, dark tendrils trying to pierce through silver fire. Hope held her ground, channeling everything the flame bearers had taught her. Everything she'd learned today. The pups woke at her chest, and instead of crying, they added their power to hers, 3 small flames joining with hers to create something magnificent. Around them, the battle raged. Isaac and his wolves tore through shadow creatures, their combined alpha power devastating. Carrie fought with surgical precision, taking down enemies with targeted strikes. Gina's forces held the western approach, preventing reinforcements from breaking through. But Reba was stronger than anyone Hope had faced. Every attack Hope threw at her, the priestess deflected. Every defense Hope raised, Reba found a way through. They fought like that for what felt like hours but was probably minutes, light against dark, silver against shadow, 2 opposing forces locked in deadly dance. You're strong, Reba admitted, breathing hard. Stronger than the last flame bearer we killed. But you're untrained, desperate. And desperation makes you sloppy. She was right. Hope was tiring, her power draining faster than she could replenish it. The pups were whimpering, exhausted from channeling. And all around her warriors were falling, not dead, but injured, overwhelmed by sheer numbers. They were losing. No. Hope refused to accept that. She hadn't survived everything, the rejection, the hunt, the trials, the assassins, just to fall now. She was the silver flame, the flame bearer, chosen by the goddess to protect these pups and forge a new path. And she was done being afraid of her own power. Hope closed her eyes and reached deeper than she'd ever gone before. Past the silver flame, past the bond with the pups, past even the connection to Isaac, she reached for the source itself, for the divine spark the goddess had placed in her soul the night she was born under the blood moon. I am Hope Horn, she thought. I am Omega and warrior, protector and destroyer, broken and whole. I am exactly what the goddess made me to be. And I claim all of it. The silver flame detonated. Pure, radiant power exploded from Hope's body in a wave that swept across the entire battlefield. Shadow creatures dissolved on contact. Dark magic shattered like glass. And every wolf, friend and foe alike, fell to their knees as divinity itself pressed down on them. Hope opened her eyes, and they were no longer just golden. They blazed with silver fire, with the accumulated power of every flame bearer who had come before, with the goddess's own approval. You wanted the silver flame? Hope's voice echoed with otherworldly resonance. Here I am. She raised her hands, and pillars of silver fire erupted from the ground, forming a cage around Reba. The priestess tried to flee, tried to fight back, but Hope's power was absolute, overwhelming, divine. Your goddess is a shadow, Hope said, advancing on the trapped priestess. Mine is eternal. And she's decided your time is over. Silver flames poured from Hope's hands, not burning but purifying, stripping away the dark magic, the corruption, the twisted power Reba had accumulated over decades. The priestess screamed as everything she'd built was torn away, until all that remained was a broken old woman kneeling in the dirt. Run, Hope commanded, her voice still echoing with power. Run back to whatever hole you crawled out of and tell the rest of the Shadow Court what you saw here tonight. Tell them the silver flame has awakened. Tell them their time is over. Reba ran. And with her went the remaining shadow warriors, fleeing into the forest like smoke dissipating in sunlight. The battle was over. Hope's power slowly faded, the divine presence receding, and she collapsed to her knees, gasping. The pups were crying but alive, their power drained but intact. And around her, her warriors were standing, bruised and bloodied but victorious. Isaac was there in seconds, pulling her into his arms, checking her for injuries, making desperate sounds of relief. I'm okay, Hope whispered. We're okay. We won. You won, Isaac corrected, his voice thick with emotion. You incredible, magnificent, absolutely terrifying woman. You won. Hope managed a tired smile. Told you I was ready. Then exhaustion took her, and she knew nothing more. Chapter 9. Crowned in silver light. Hope woke to sunlight streaming through canvas walls, and the sound of 3 contented pups making soft eating sounds. For a moment, she didn't remember. Then it all came rushing back: the battle, the power, the way she'd burned the Shadow Court away like mist in morning light. She sat up carefully, expecting pain, but found only a bone-deep exhaustion that suggested she'd been asleep for more than just a night. Easy, Carrie's voice came from beside the bed. The healer set aside the book she'd been reading and moved to check Hope's pulse. You've been out for 2 days. Your body needed time to recover from channeling that much divine power. 2 days? Hope's eyes widened. The pups have been fed and cared for every few hours. Carrie gestured to where they slept in a basket beside the bed, their bellies full, and their expressions peaceful. Isaac refused to let anyone else handle them except me and Gina. He's been beside himself, waiting for you to wake up. As if summoned by his name, the tent flap burst open and Isaac strode in, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his hair wild, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion and worry. When he saw Hope sitting up, conscious and whole, something in his expression cracked. Thank the goddess, he breathed, crossing to her in 3 long strides. He pulled her into his arms, careful but desperate, and Hope felt his whole body shaking. I thought when you collapsed, when you wouldn't wake Hope, I thought I'd lost you. I'm okay. Hope murmured against his chest, breathing in his scent. Pine and smoke and home. Just tired. How bad were our losses? 17 injured, none critical. Isaac pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. 0 dead. Because of you. Because you ended it before they could do real damage. His thumb brushed across her cheek. You saved us all, Hope. We saved each other, Hope corrected. I couldn't have done it without you, without all of you. Carrie cleared her throat. I'll give you 2 some privacy. But Hope? You need to eat something substantial before you do anything else. And Isaac, you need to sleep. You've been awake for 48 hours straight. I'm not leaving her, Isaac said without looking away from Hope. Then sleep here, you stubborn man. Carrie's tone was fond despite her exasperation. I'll have food sent in. She left, and Hope and Isaac were alone with the sleeping pups and 2 days' worth of unspoken emotion hanging between them. I was so scared, Isaac admitted quietly. When you released all that power, when you blazed so bright I could barely look at you. Hope, you were magnificent, terrifying, divine, and I was terrified you'd burn yourself up completely. I almost did, Hope confessed. The goddess's power. It's not meant to be held by mortal bodies for long. The flame bearers showed me how to channel it, but even they warned me that using it would cost me. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. But I'd do it again. For you. For the pups. For everyone who was depending on me. I know you would. That's part of what scares me. Isaac's smile was soft, sad. You're so brave it terrifies me. Because brave people do dangerous things. necessary things, but dangerous nonetheless. Then be brave with me, Hope said simply. Stand beside me. Trust that I'm strong enough to survive what's coming. What's coming? Isaac's brow furrowed. The shadow cord is broken. Reba fled. We captured 4 of her lieutenants. They're being questioned now about remaining cells, but the immediate threat is over. I don't mean external threats. Hope shifted to face him fully. I mean what comes next. The territories accepting an Omega as your mate. The council dealing with a power they don't understand. The pups growing up in a world that tried to kill them before they could even speak. She paused. Us. Learning how to be partners when we've barely had time to be anything at all. Isaac was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. The council wants to hold a formal recognition ceremony, to acknowledge you publicly as my mate and as the pup's guardian. Gina's been pushing for it. She thinks it'll solidify your position, make it harder for anyone to challenge you. What do you think? I think I don't care about ceremonies or politics. Isaac's eyes met hers, blazing with intensity. I think I claimed you the moment the mate bond snapped into place, and no ritual is going to make that more or less true. But, he paused, I also think you deserve to be honored, celebrated, to stand before the territories and have everyone acknowledge what you are to me, to them. Hope felt her throat tighten. Isaac, let me do this, he said softly. Let me give you the moment every mate deserves, where you're not running or fighting or barely surviving, where you can just be loved, publicly, completely, without question. Tears burned behind Hope's eyes. After a lifetime of being invisible, of being told she wasn't worth acknowledgement, the idea of standing before hundreds of wolves, and being claimed, being celebrated, being seen, it was almost too much. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Isaac's smile was brilliant. The ceremony will be in 3 days. That gives you time to recover, for us to finish questioning prisoners and securing the borders. And his expression turned sly. For you to meet someone, who, as if in answer, the tent flap opened again. But this time, it wasn't Carrie who entered. It was a woman young, maybe 25, with long dark hair and eyes that were unmistakably the same golden shade as the pups. She moved with cautious grace, her gaze immediately finding the basket where the 3 small bodies slept. Hope, Isaac said quietly. This is Amalia's sister, Jennifer O'Donnell. She's been searching for the pups since the fire. Hope's breath caught. The pups' aunt, family. Jennifer approached slowly, her eyes never leaving the basket. When she saw them, really saw them, alive and whole and sleeping peacefully, she made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. They're alive, she breathed. After 6 months of believing they were gone, they're alive. Her eyes found Hope's, shining with tears. You saved them. You protected my sister's children when no one else even knew they needed protecting. Hope didn't know what to say. I just did what anyone would do. No. Jennifer shook her head firmly. Not anyone. You're bonded to them. I can feel it from here. The connection between you is strong as blood, maybe stronger. She moved closer, kneeling beside Hope's bed. I came here to take them home, to raise them as Amalia would have wanted, but I can see now that they already have a home. With you. You're their family, Hope protested. Their blood. You're their mother, Jennifer interrupted gently. In every way that matters. You risked everything for them. Fought for them. Nearly died for them. She reached out, taking Hope's hand. My sister would have loved you, would have been grateful that her children found someone so fierce to protect them. Hope's tears finally spilled over. I'm not trying to replace her. I could never. I know, Jennifer squeezed her hand. But you're not replacing her. You're honoring her by loving them as she would have. And Hope? That's all any parent could ask for. She glanced at Isaac, then back to Hope. I'm not here to take them. I'm here to ask if I can be part of their lives. As their aunt. As family. Yes, Hope said immediately. Yes. Of course. They should know their family. Should know where they came from. And they should know you, Jennifer said with a smile. The woman who loved them before she even knew their names. The moment broke when the pups woke, their small cries filling the tent. Hope moved to pick them up, but Jennifer stopped her. "May I?" she asked softly. Hope nodded, and Jennifer lifted the white-patched female gently, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little one. I'm your Aunt Jennifer. I've been looking for you for so long." The pup studied her with those wise golden eyes, then reached out a tiny paw to touch Jennifer's face, as if saying, "I know you. I remember you." They spent the next hour together, Hope, Isaac, and Jennifer talking about the pups, about Amalia and Javier, about everything that had happened. Jennifer shared stories of her sister, painting a picture of a vibrant, artistic woman who had loved deeply and dreamed of the family she'd never got to fully build. "She painted a mural," Jennifer said at one point, her voice thick with emotion. "In the nursery. 3 wolves running under the moon, one with a white chest, one dark as shadow, one marked with silver. She painted it months before they were born," said the goddess showed her in a dream. She looked at Hope. "She would have known you were coming, would have trusted that when she couldn't be there, you would be." The words settled into Hope's chest, heavy and healing all at once. She hadn't taken anything from Amalia. She'd continued what Amalia started, had become the bridge between what was lost and what could still be saved. When Jennifer finally left, promising to return for the ceremony, Hope felt something she hadn't expected to feel: peace. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Warriors healed. Borders were reinforced. The captured Shadow Court members revealed the locations of remaining cells, which were dismantled with surgical precision. Glenn Mackenzie was tried and exiled, along with the other collaborators who'd been discovered. Elder Willa appeared on the second day, requesting a private audience with Hope. They met in Isaac's quarters, just the two of them, and for a long moment neither spoke. Finally, Willa broke the silence. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I let my own fears, my own self-hatred, cloud my judgment. I saw in you everything I'd spent my life denying about myself, and I tried to destroy you for it." "You were protecting yourself," Hope said quietly. "I understand that. Understanding doesn't excuse it." Willa's hands clenched in her lap. "I put you through the trial of clarity, knowing it would expose every painful moment of your life. I confined you when assassins were hunting you. I tried to break the mate bond that gives you strength." She looked up, and her eyes were suspiciously bright. "And despite all of that, you showed me mercy. You could have destroyed me with what the trial revealed, and you chose not to. Because destroying you wouldn't have fixed anything," Hope said. "It would have just perpetuated the same cycle of shame and rejection that hurt us both." She leaned forward. "Elder Willa, you don't have to hide anymore. The trial revealed your truth, but it doesn't have to define you. You could be free now, could accept what you are instead of fighting it." Willa was quiet for a long time. Then, so softly Hope almost missed it, "I don't know how." "Then learn." Hope's smile was gentle. "The same way I did. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Starting with being honest about who you are. And if the other council members reject me, then they're hypocrites who deserve to lose your wisdom and leadership." Hope's voice was firm. "But I don't think they will. I think once you stop fighting yourself, you'll find that the people who matter will accept you, and the ones who don't weren't worth keeping anyway." Willa stood, and for the first time since Hope had met her, the elder's spine wasn't quite so rigid, her mask not quite so perfect. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing me what courage actually looks like." After she left, Isaac emerged from where he'd been listening just outside. "That was incredibly generous," he said, pulling Hope into his arms. "Or incredibly naive," Hope countered with a wry smile. "We'll see which. Either way." Isaac kissed her forehead. "You're changing this world, Hope Horn. One stubborn elder at a time." The day of the ceremony dawned clear and beautiful. Hope stood in Isaac's quarters, staring at the formal dress Carrie and Jennifer had brought. It was silver, of course. It was with intricate embroidery that caught the light and moved like flame. Nothing like the simple, worn clothes she'd spent her life in. This was a dress for someone important, someone valued, someone loved. "You're going to be beautiful," Jennifer said, helping her into it. Amalia would have loved this. She always said the silver flame deserved to burn bright. The pups were dressed too, in tiny ceremonial wraps that matched Hope's dress. They seemed to sense the importance of the day, staying unusually calm and alert. When Hope finally emerged, Isaac was waiting outside in his formal armor, black and gold, marking him clearly as the Alpha King. But when he saw Hope, everything else fell away. His expression went slack with wonder, and through the bond, Hope felt his love crash over her like a wave. "You're stunning," he breathed. "I'm terrified," Hope admitted. "Then be terrified together." Isaac offered his arm. "Ready to let the world see us?" Hope thought about the frightened Omega who'd run through the forest not even 2 weeks ago. Thought about everything she'd survived, everything she'd become, and she thought about the man beside her, the pups in her arms, and the future stretching out before them like an unwritten story. "Yes," she said, taking his arm. "I'm ready." The ceremony was held at the archive, where everything had begun. Hundreds of wolves filled the clearing, not just from Isaac's pack, but from territories across the north. They'd come to witness this moment, to see the Omega who defeated the Shadow Court, to acknowledge the new order taking shape. Elder Willa stood at the archive's center, and when she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "We gather today to witness a sacred bond, to acknowledge what the goddess herself has ordained." She looked at Hope, and there was no animosity in her gaze anymore, only respect. "Hope Horn, step forward." Hope did, her heart hammering, the pups secure in their ceremonial sling. "You came to us as an outcast. Rejected. Deemed powerless by those who should have cherished you." Willa's voice carried across the gathering. "But the goddess saw what we did not. Saw the strength in your gentleness, the power in your compassion, the flame waiting to be awakened." She gestured to the pups. "And she gave you the most sacred task to protect the future of our people, to stand as guardian and mother to those who would otherwise have been lost." Hope felt tears threatening, but she held them back. "Alpha King Isaac Bowman," Willa continued, "step forward and make your claim." Isaac moved to stand beside Hope, taking her free hand. "I claim Hope Horn as my mate," he said, his voice resonating with alpha power. "Not because of her power or her bond to the royal heirs, but because she is brave and fierce and more worthy than anyone I've ever known. Because she makes me better. Because I love her with everything I am." The bond between them flared bright, visible even to those without magical sight, silver and gold twining together, permanent and unbreakable. "And I claim Isaac Bowman," Hope said, finding her voice. "Not because he's king or powerful or perfect, but because he saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I felt worthless, chose me when he could have had anyone." Her voice grew stronger. "Because he's mine, and I'm his, and that's all that matters. Then let all who witness this acknowledge the truth," Willa announced. "Hope Horn is mate to the Alpha King, mother to the royal heirs, flame-bearer of the Northern Territories." She raised her hands, "And may any who challenge this bond answer to the goddess herself." The gathering erupted into howls, not aggressive, but celebratory. Acknowledging, accepting. Hope looked out at all those faces, all those wolves who had doubted her, feared her, tried to reject her. And she saw them recognizing her worth. Saw them understanding what she'd always known deep down but had been too afraid to claim. She belonged, not despite being Omega, not despite being different, but because of everything she was broken and whole, gentle and fierce, survivor and warrior all at once. Isaac pulled her close and kissed her in front of everyone, and Hope felt the last piece of her fractured heart click into place. She was home. After the ceremony, there was celebration, food and music and laughter that lasted well into the night. Hope moved through it in a daze, accepting congratulations, meeting wolves who wanted to thank her for defeating the Shadow Court, watching Isaac glow with pride every time someone acknowledged her. The pups were passed around carefully, cooed over by dozens of wolves who marveled at how alert they were, how strong. Jennifer stayed close, making sure they were safe, and Hope felt grateful for the family these three had gained. As the moon rose full and bright, Isaac pulled Hope away from the celebration to a quiet corner of the archive. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a pendant silver shaped like a flame, set with 3 small stones that glowed faintly gold. The pups' colors, their essence captured in metal and light. "It's beautiful," Hope breathed. It's a reminder. Isaac clasped it around her neck. That you're not alone anymore, that you have me, the pups, Jennifer, even Willa in her own complicated way, that you've built something here, Hope. A family, a future, a home. Hope touched the pendant, feeling its warmth against her skin. I never thought I'd have any of this. Never let myself hope for it. Well, Isaac's smile was soft. I guess you're living up to your name then. Hope, you've given it to all of us the chance to be better, to build something new, to move past old prejudices and into something brighter. He pulled her close. You've given me hope that I can be more than just a king, that I can be a partner, a father to those pups, a mate who deserves you. You do deserve me, Hope said fiercely. We deserve each other. We deserve all of this, the peace, the love, the future we're going to build together. Then let's build it. Isaac kissed her again, and this time it was slow, deep, full of promise. Starting right now, one day, at a time, together. Behind them, the celebration continued. The pups slept peacefully in their basket. The moon shone bright overhead, and Hope Horn Omega, flame bearer, mate, mother, warrior stood in the center of her new life. And finally believed she was exactly where she was meant to be. Chapter 10. The Epilogue. 6 months later, spring had transformed the Northern Territories. Hope stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching 3 wolf pups no longer quite so small tumble and play in the morning sunlight. They were 6 months older now, stronger, more coordinated. The white-patched female, whom they'd named Luna, was already showing leadership qualities, organizing her brothers into elaborate games. The dark gray male, Shadow, was the cautious one, always thinking 3 steps ahead, and the silver-marked male, Sterling, was fearless, constantly pushing boundaries and testing limits. They were perfect. And they were hers. They're getting faster, Jennifer observed, appearing at Hope's side with 2 cups of tea. Luna nearly caught that rabbit yesterday. Shadow would have if he'd been willing to take the risk. And Sterling would have if he hadn't gotten distracted by a butterfly halfway through, Hope added with a laugh. She accepted the tea gratefully, breathing in the steam. Thank you. For being here. For helping raise them. Where else would I be? Jennifer smiled. They're my family. You're my family. This is home now. Home. 6 months ago, Hope hadn't had a home. Now she had a territory, a mate, 3 growing pups, an aunt by choice, and more people who cared about her than she'd ever imagined possible. The training grounds had become Hope's special project. Not just for the pups, but for others like her Omegas who'd been told they were too weak, too broken, too other to ever be warriors. She'd started teaching them 3 months ago, showing them how to access the power they'd been conditioned to suppress. Hope. A voice called from across the field. Young Addie Hannah, an Omega from the Eastern Pack, waved enthusiastically. I did it. I held the partial shift for 5 minutes. Hope's grin was genuine and proud. That's incredible. Show me tonight during evening practice. Addie beamed and ran back to her training partner, practically glowing with accomplishment. You're changing lives, Jennifer said quietly. Not just theirs, everyone's. The whole system is shifting because you proved it could be different. I didn't do it alone, Hope protested, but Jennifer just laughed. Hope, you face down the shadow court with divine fire. You can accept a compliment. Before Hope could respond, she felt Isaac through the bond approaching from the east, radiating contentment mixed with that ever-present awareness of her. A moment later, he emerged from the tree line in wolf form, magnificent and powerful, with a hunting party behind him. He shifted as he reached her. And Hope never got tired of watching the transformation the way his wolf melted into his human form, all controlled power and fluid grace. Successful hunt? She asked, moving into his embrace automatically. Very. Isaac kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. Enough to feed the whole camp for 3 days. And I brought you something. He produced a flower from behind his back, a wild rose, pink and delicate and probably found growing somewhere along their route. It was such a simple gesture, but it made Hope's heart squeeze. You're ridiculous, she said, but her smile gave away how much she loved it. I'm in love, Isaac corrected. There's a difference. The pups noticed Isaac's arrival and abandoned their game immediately, racing toward him with excited yips. He crouched to greet them, letting them climb all over him. And Hope watched the Alpha King of the Northern Territories get absolutely mauled by 3 overenthusiastic wolf pups. "They're getting strong," Isaac observed, trying to gently extract Sterling from his hair. "Luna tried to take down a deer last week. She failed spectacularly," Hope added. "But the attempt was impressive. That's my girl." Isaac finally managed to stand, Pups still trying to climb him. Fearless like her mother. The words still made Hope pause sometimes. Mother. She was mother to 3 royal heirs. Mate to the Alpha King. Flame bearer and teacher and warrior. All the things she'd never imagined she could be. "I've been thinking," Isaac said as they walked back toward the main compound, the pups racing ahead, Jennifer trailing behind them with knowing smile. "About expanding the Omega training program, making it official. A school, maybe, where Omegas from all territories can come learn that they're more than what tradition says they are." Hope's breath caught. "Isaac, that would be the council would." "The council," Isaac interrupted gently, "has learned to listen when the flame bearer has opinions. Especially after you saved all their lives." His arm came around her waist. "And more importantly, it's the right thing to do. You've proven that power isn't about rank or bloodline. It's about choice. About courage. About refusing to accept limitations others try to place on you. A school," Hope repeated, letting herself imagine it. "Dozens of Omegas learning to shift, to fight, to claim their power. We could change everything. We already have." Isaac pulled her closer. "But yes, let's change more." They reached the main compound, where Carrie was waiting with Gina Valentine. The councilwoman had become one of Hope's strongest allies, pushing reforms through the council with determined efficiency. "There you are," Gina said. "We need to discuss the proposal for the Western Territories. 3 packs have requested to join the Northern Alliance specifically because of your Omega protection policies." 3? Hope blinked. Last week it was 1. Word spreads. Gina's smile was satisfied. Omegas talk to each other. They're hearing that there's a place where they're valued, where they can be more than invisible support. They want that. Their alphas are smart enough to recognize that happy, empowered pack members make for stronger packs overall. Or they're afraid of what happens if they don't adapt, Carrie added dryly. Hard to maintain old prejudices when the most powerful wolf in 5 territories is an Omega who can call down divine fire. Hope laughed despite herself. "I'm not that scary." "You absolutely are," all 3 of them said in unison. The afternoon passed in meetings and planning, the pups playing nearby under Jennifer's watchful eye. They discussed expansion plans, alliance treaties, and the logistics of building an actual school. Elder Willa appeared at one point, now openly acknowledged as half Omega, bringing architectural plans she'd drawn up for the proposed training facility. "I thought about what you said," Willa told Hope during a quiet moment. "About being free. About accepting what I am." She paused. "I'd like to help teach. If you'll have me. I spent 50 years hiding my Omega nature, but I learned a lot about control, about managing power in hostile environments. That knowledge could be useful. It would be invaluable," Hope said warmly. "Thank you." As the sun began to set, Hope finally extracted herself from the planning session and went to find Isaac. He was at their quarters, no longer a tent but an actual structure built at the camp's heart, sitting on the porch with all 3 pups asleep in a pile on his lap. "They ambushed me," he whispered, trying not to move. "I've been trapped for 20 minutes. Hope bit back a laugh and carefully settled beside him. "You're the Alpha King. Order them to move." "I absolutely will not." Isaac looked down at the sleeping pups with such love it made Hope's chest ache. "They can trap me anytime they want." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky painted itself in shades of orange and pink. Around them, the compound was settling in for evening fires being lit, meals being prepared, wolves heading home to their families. "Do you ever miss it?" Isaac asked quietly. "Your old life." Before all this chaos, Hope thought about the Clearwater Pack, about the years of rejection and invisibility, about the woman she'd been, always afraid, always believing she wasn't enough. "No," she said honestly. "I don't miss who I was. But I'm grateful for her. She survived everything so I could become this." Hope leaned against Isaac's shoulder, Besides, that wasn't a life. It was existence. This, she gestured to the pups. The compound, the life they'd built. This is living. I'm glad you think so. Isaac shifted carefully, managing to press a kiss to her temple without waking the pups. Because I plan to spend the rest of my very long life making sure you never doubt that you deserve all of this. The rest of your life? Hope's smile was teasing. That's a pretty long commitment. Not long enough, Isaac said seriously. I'd take eternity if the goddess offered it. Later, after the pups had been fed and settled in their room, actual beds now instead of baskets, Hope and Isaac finally had a moment alone. They stood on their porch, watching the moon rise over the territories, and Hope felt that familiar silver warmth in her chest. The silver flame, always present now, always ready if she needed it, but controlled. Hers. I've been thinking about names, Isaac said suddenly. Names? For our children. His hand found her stomach, resting there gently. The ones we'll have someday. When the territories are stable, and the pups are older, and we're ready for more chaos. Hope's breath caught. They'd talked about future children in abstract terms, but hearing Isaac say it so concretely, so certainly it made it real, made it possible. What names were you thinking? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. For a girl, maybe Amalia, after the pup's mother. To honor her. Isaac's voice was soft. And for a boy, he paused. I thought maybe Hope could choose. You want to name our hypothetical son before we're even pregnant. I want to plan our future. Isaac turned her to face him. I want to imagine the life we're going to build, children in chaos and probably more disasters that we'll survive together. I want to picture growing old with you. Teaching our children and grandchildren. Becoming the embarrassing elders who tell stories about the time you defeated an ancient evil with literal divine fire. Hope was crying now, but they were good tears. Happy tears. You've really thought about this. I think about it every day. Isaac wiped her tears away gently. About the future where you're not just surviving but thriving. Where those pups grow strong and safe. Where the Omega School becomes legendary. Where we're so disgustingly happy that people make jokes about it. His smile turned wicked. Where I get to love you for the next 50 years and beyond. 50 years. Hope pretended to consider. I suppose that's acceptable. Just acceptable? Isaac's eyebrow rose in challenge. Exceptional, Hope amended. Perfect. Everything I never knew I wanted but somehow found anyway. She pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like promise and possibility. I love you, Isaac Bowman. My king, my mate, my partner in absolutely everything. I love you too, Hope Bowman. Isaac grinned at her surprised expression. What? You took my name when we mated. Or did you think I was going to keep calling you Hope Horn forever? Hope realized she'd never actually thought about it. Hope Bowman. That's really my name now. It's really your name. Isaac's expression went soft. You're really mine. And I'm really yours. Forever. Forever. 6 months ago, forever had seemed impossible. Now it stretched out before them like an open road, full of possibility and promise and all the chaos and joy that came with building a life together. From inside, one of the pups, probably Sterling, let out a small cry. Hope moved to check on him, but Isaac caught her hand. Wait, just one more moment. He pulled her back against his chest, both of them looking out at their territories. I want to remember this, right now, when everything is perfect. Everything is perfect. Hope agreed. And it's going to stay that way. Because we'll make it that way. Together. Together, Isaac echoed, and kissed her one more time before they went inside to tend to their family. The girl who ran through the storm is gone. In her place stands a woman who commands fire, who guards the future, who built a home from nothing but courage and love, and sheer stubborn refusal to stay broken. Hope Horn no. Hope Bowman learned what so many of us need to learn. That the things we're told to hide are often the things we're meant to share. That power doesn't corrupt unless we let it. That being different isn't a curse, it's a calling. She was born an Omega, in a world that devalued Omegas. Born under a blood moon that her pack called cursed. Born to parents who died before they could teach her she was worthy. And she spent 23 years believing all the lies she'd been told about herself. Until 3 orphaned pups followed her through the forest and changed everything. until an alpha king saw her worth before she could see it herself, until the goddess reminded her that she'd been building toward this moment her entire life. The silver flame wasn't thrust upon her, it was awakened in her. It had always been there, waiting for Hope to be ready to claim it. And when she finally did, when she stopped running and started fighting, when she chose herself, instead of accepting what others chose for her, that's when everything changed. Now she stands at the center of a transformed world, teaching Omegas that they're warriors, raising 3 royal heirs with fierce love, building a school that will reshape how an entire culture views power, and loving a king who chose her over duty, over tradition, over everything he was supposed to want. She's not perfect. She still has moments of doubt, days when the old voices whisper that she's not enough. But now she has Isaac to remind her of her strength, has 3 pups who prove she's capable, has a community who sees her worth, and most importantly, has herself, the woman she became by surviving everything meant to destroy her. That's what her story teaches us. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. You just have to be brave enough to let yourself be seen, brave enough to claim what's yours, brave enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, you were always meant to be exactly who you are. The world tried to make Hope small, tried to convince her that Omega meant less than, that power wasn't for people like her, that she should be grateful for scraps and silence. But Hope had the audacity to want more, to be more, to become more. And in doing so, she didn't just save herself. She saved 3 pups who needed a mother, saved a king who needed a partner, saved a culture that was suffocating under the weight of its own prejudices. She burned away the old world and forged a new one from the ashes. That's the power of refusing to accept the limitations others try to place on you. That's what happens when you choose courage over comfort, truth over tradition, love over fear. That's what it means to be the silver flame. Thank you for walking this journey with Hope, for believing she deserved her happy ending even when she couldn't believe it herself, for staying through the storm and the fire, and all the moments in between. Maybe you felt like her, too much of one thing, not enough of another, split between worlds, belonging nowhere, carrying power you're afraid to claim because claiming it means accepting you were never as small as they said you were. If that's you, hear this. The things that make you different aren't mistakes. They're not flaws to fix or problems to solve. They're the very things that make you necessary, essential, irreplaceable. Hope's story is about finding home, but it's also about becoming home for yourself, about looking at all your broken pieces and recognizing them as battle scars, not failures, about understanding that you weren't broken, you were becoming. You were always becoming. If this story moved you, I want to hear from you. What moment resonated most deeply? Was it Hope standing up to the council, the pups choosing her in the forest, Isaac claiming her publicly, the moment she finally called herself worthy? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If you felt Hope's journey in your bones, if you've ever been told you're too much or not enough, if you're still learning to claim your own power, subscribe to this channel, because here, we tell stories about the ones who don't fit, the ones who were told they're broken, the ones who learn that being different isn't a curse, it's a calling. We tell stories about becoming, and we're just getting started. Until the next story finds us, remember this. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. You just have to be brave enough to let yourself be seen, brave enough to claim what's yours, brave enough to stop running from your power and start running toward your purpose. You were never broken. You were always becoming. And maybe, just maybe, you're exactly who you were always meant to be. With love and silver flames, see you in the next story.